Chapter 701, Where to Go for Summer Vacation. The power of Heavenly Treasure School is mysterious. Jiang Yanlan was now like a secretary, constantly telling Zhang Han what she knew. It is like the mysterious black-white palace hidden in mystical martial world in the northeast, and no one knows its background. Heavenly Treasure School has a high status, and each time it has appeared with the world lit, all the visitors behaved themselves because they were afraid of being killed. The inheritance mode of the black-white palace is in a single line, and we can only see one of its disciples each time. These disciples always suppressing all other talents. No one has broken the record so far. Basically, a disciple of the black-white palace will come out every 100 years. Now it has been more than 90 years since their last appearance, and when the gate of the small world is opened, they will probably send someone out. The black-white palace is mysterious indeed. Shen Qingqing nodded in agreement with her. Last time, they sent a young man called Wu Long, who was at God Realm peak stage and soon advanced to Earth Realm after fighting with several martial artists in the main world. It is said that his moves are particularly cruel, but if someone from the black-white palace comes to the main world again this time, they will be unable to defeat Brother Han. Maybe that's true. Jiang Yanlan looked at Zhang Han and said with a smile, when several of us, including Azure Dragon, chatted with our eldest brother, we wondered whether you were a disciple of the black-white palace because your styles are a bit similar. The disciples of the black-white palace are merciless like you, however, every time they come to the main world, they were at least at God Realm medium stage, and keep advancing at high speed. Therefore, we denied this idea. Zhang Han's expression didn't change when they were talking about the black-white palace, which surprised Jiang Yanlan. In her eyes, Zhang Han Yang was so proud and self-confident that he even looked down on the black-white palace. If there is a competition between them, I hope Zhang Han Yang can defeat the disciple of the black-white palace, then he will break another record. While Jiang Yanlan was thinking about it, she suddenly saw Instructor Liu smiling at her. Jiang Yanlan couldn't help rolling her eyes. So we'll go for a walk again in a few days. Zif was not interested in Heavenly Treasure School, but she liked traveling. Well. Xian, who was silent all the time, took a glance at Zhang Han. Then she blinked her eyes and asked, shall we go with you this time? Zhang Han nodded without hesitation. Of course, it's safe there. I promise that I will travel all over the world with you and Meng Meng. Xian smiled and turned her gaze at Zhang Han. Humphrey, you are clever this time. I'll think about rewarding you. Buzz. Zhang Han looked at Xian with an expression. Got it. The others didn't know what they were talking about with their eyes, but no one wanted to disturb them. That's it. I'm going to beat Liu. Let's go. Jiang Yanlan stood up and took a glance at Instructor Liu. Why? Instructor Liu was confused. What a merciless girl. How dare she speak in this way in front of my boss and brother King? Not daring to speak his mind out, Instructor Liu said repeatedly, no, number. I won't go with you. I want to live for 2 more years. Humphrey, coward. Jiang Yanlan snorted and rushed to the front mountain. Shall we go for a walk? Shen Qingqing looked at Zif and said, I'm going to go back tomorrow. Will you accompany me? Me? Well, it depends. Zif took a glance at Xian. Go as you like. Xian smiled. Now we are all on vacation. You and Qingqing are free to travel wherever you want to go. It's time for you to enjoy your world. Before Xian finished, Zif's face turned a little red and grasped Shen Qingqing's sleeve. Let's go. Finally, early in the morning the next day, Zif and Shen Qingqing got on the flight to Shangjing, on what was also the company's private plane. They had a total of 2 planes and 4 helicopters, which could take them anywhere nearby or far away. These planes were usually idle because the staff of Meng Meng Group seldom traveled for business. There were too many contracts of intention sent to them every day. With Liu Qingfeng managing the company outside, and Sun Ming taking care of everything in the company, they didn't have to worry about the business. The employees of Purple Moon Entertainment Company were very leisurely, which was well known in Hong Kong. Therefore, Purple Moon Entertainment Company was known as the most casual company in the Hong Kong entertainment industry. It offered its employees the best treatment and the highest salary, which was a dream for countless people. Nevertheless, no one had seen the recruitment information of Purple Moon Entertainment Company. The company had enough staff and no one was willing to leave, so there was no space for others to squeeze in. They seemed to be relaxed, but they could burst out amazing energy when it was needed. During the production period of Pirates of the Caribbean, the dubbing staff and other departments exceeded the task, and everyone at the company was expected to receive bonuses. Happy times always passed quickly. After Meng Meng went to school during the day, the young couple in the castle spent most of their time in their big bed. The rest of the time, they made lunch together and then went to the seaside in the afternoon to take a yacht, experience the water entertainment, and travel in the beautiful underwater world near the coast. Occasionally they would go shopping, drink coffee, and even go to an internet bar to experience the fun of online games. They were so happy that Xian even sighed. "It's terrible. I'm so lazy now that I don't want to go back to work. It's all your fault." Every time he looked at the childlike Xian, Zhang Han would embrace her and throw her onto the bed. Soon, the world's most primitive and beautiful melody was sounded again in the room. Time passed quickly. At noon on Friday, when Zhang Han and Xian went to pick up Meng Meng, they held a simple parents' meeting. With the summer vacation approaching, Teacher Lu made a brief summary of the junior class year and praised Zhang Han and Xian again. All the excellent teachers were obvious to all. Meng Meng was excellent, and all the teachers preferred a clever child like her. After that, Teacher Lu made a brief introduction about the coming middle class year. Some parents wanted their children to study in advance and prepare for the new semester so that they would be more competitive and surpass the other students through hard work. "It's unnecessary for my daughter." While walking to the school gate, Zhang Han shook his head after listening to the plans of parents around him. "Meng Meng," Zhang Han said, "you have got a little red flower again today. It's great and you are excellent. As a reward, I'll take you to travel tomorrow. Let's go out and play." "Eh, shall we go out?" "Great. Papa is the best. I love you so much." Meng Meng was overjoyed and kissed Zhang Han many times. Xian was amused and said, "You will spoil Meng Meng." "Of course, she is my daughter," Zhang Han said with great confidence. "Ha ha ha, Mama, he's my dearest papa, he's amazing." Meng Meng smiled proudly. "Well, it is said that the daughter was Papa's lover in his previous life. Humphrey, you are here to compete with me." "No, Papa is the best. Mama, you are here to compete with me." The family of three left the school, chatting and laughing. Li Kai and his family followed them, and his wife was talking with his daughter. "You can play for a few days in the summer vacation, but don't forget to study. Mom has prepared 2 tutoring classes for you. You are going to learn musical instruments and English. Let's forget about studying for a while and go traveling. It's time to enjoy ourselves," said Li Kai. Li Kai didn't go out to relax for a long time. It so happened that the summer vacation was coming. He decided to follow Zhang Han's example and take his family out to have fun. Li Mun cheered at Li Kai's words. His mother rolled her eyes helplessly. Of course, Zhang Han was not the only one in the world who could give his daughter happiness, but he could make his daughter's happiness perfect. Zhang Han was at the top of the pyramid in this prospect. Meng Meng spent the afternoon playing with Dai, Little Hai, and Tiny Tot in the back hills. Before they parted at dusk, Meng Meng said, "Big Hai, Little Hai and Tiny Tot, please watch the door. I'm going to travel with Papa and I'll be back in a few days. I'll bring you presents." Meng Meng said this seriously because the 3 guys were all her friends. At 8 o'clock the next morning, the family of 3 was ready to leave. In addition to Zhang Han and his family, Zhao Feng and several other followers also went to Cloud Sea City with them. The Wangs chose to stay in Hong Kong because they had no interest in such kind of activities. Shen Chenking and Zif had taken the morning flight to Shangjing with the warlord of Chan clan. Gai Xingkong would go with Zhang Han, as he said in a phone call. Besides that, there were also some other martial artists who decided to travel with them. When Zhang Han and his family walked out of the castle, Dai, Little Hai, and Tiny Tot were seeing them off the top of the mountain. Meng Meng reluctantly said goodbye to them and then got in the car and left Mount New Moon. Their trip this time would not take them too long. The gate of the worldlet would open immediately, and Zhang Han would go back to Mount New Moon to prepare for the follow-up. The safety of Xian and Meng Meng was the most important. The motorcade went down from Mount New Moon. More than 10 minutes later, they arrived at Meng Meng Group. All the people living in New Moon Bay knew the current situation of Mount New Moon. There were countless luxury houses on it, which belonged to the chairman of Meng Meng Group. Yet, few people knew that the mountain was inhabited by Zhang Han Yang, the #1 martial artist in Hong Kong. "Papa, how long will we fly this time?" After getting off the car, Meng Meng turned her gaze at the plane that she once called Big Bird. "Well." Zhang Han took a glance at Zhao Feng. Zhang Han didn't know when they would arrive at the destination. 5 hours and 15 minutes, Zhao Feng replied. "Meng Meng can have a rest on the plane, and then go out to play in the afternoon after we arrive." "Well, I don't want to sleep, I want to listen to Papa telling stories." Meng Meng grasped Zhang Han's hand and mumbled, "Ha ha, okay, Papa will tell stories." Zhang Han smiled. When they got on the plane, they saw that there were already 3 people sitting inside. They were Wang, Mo Chengfeng, and Jiang Yanlan, and they were all there to take a free flight. There were countless treasures in Heavenly Treasure School, including divine weapons and divine objects. As top-level martial artists in the martial arts world, they were unwilling to let go of such a good opportunity. They had been making preparations since they got this news. Those who were rich took their own treasures with them, while the others had borrowed some treasures in order to exchange for something they needed in the coming activity. After all, such opportunities were rare. Chapter 702, Cloud Sea City. Do you like stories, Meng Meng? Let Uncle tell you some good stories. On the plane, Zhang Han and his family sat down on the right side of the plane, where there were 3 separate seats close to each other. Behind them were Wang Ming, Rong Jiaxin, and Wang Ya. On Xian's left, there were also 3 chairs, and Jiang Yanlan was the only passenger there. Wang and Mo Chengfeng sat on the back seats, while Instructor Liu and Zhao Feng were behind Jiang Yanlan. Hearing that Meng Meng wanted to hear some stories, Instructor Liu came to the front seat and blinked his eyes at Jiang Yanlan. "Move inside, you." Jiang Yanlan widened her eyes in anger, intending to beat Instructor Liu. Still, she was on Zhang Han's plane and Meng Meng was looking at her hopefully. Meng Meng was slightly surprised. She could read the other's facial expression and knew Jiang Yanlan was angry from her stiff face. Therefore, Meng Meng turned her gaze at Instructor Liu. "Ha ha ha, nothing serious, ha ha." Jiang Yanlan forced a smile and made room for Instructor Liu. Seeing that Instructor Liu sat down without saying thank you to her, Jiang Yanlan pinched his waist with her right hand. Before Jiang Yanlan could reach Instructor Liu's flesh, ouch! A cry of pain rang out through the cabin. Everyone looked at Instructor Liu, and then turned their gaze to Jiang Yanlan. Jiang Yanlan was confused. "Why are you crying before I beat you, you are so shameless?" Jiang Yanlan's eyes quivered and she kept murmuring to herself, calm down, punish him in whatever way you like when you arrive." Puff. As if he had foreseen the danger, Instructor Liu stopped teasing Jiang Yanlan, yet, his next words made Jiang Yanlan even angrier. "Wow, Lanlan. The current on you is so strong that it makes me numb." Puff. Zhao Feng and others were almost choked by their own saliva. "Do you remember that you are a grandmaster? Can you make a more reasonable excuse?" "Liu, you are great. Ha ha ha, so great. I'll give you a greater feeling when we get off the flight." Jiang Yanlan smiled at Instructor Liu. "Ha ha ha, okay. As long as Zhang Han or Meng were there, Instructor Liu was not afraid of anything. Jiang Yanlan couldn't help thinking about how to punish Instructor Liu when she saw his expression. Therefore, she turned her gaze outside the window. As the plane rose above the clouds, the beautiful scenery outside calmed her down. Nonetheless, Jiang Yanlan soon heard Instructor Liu's idea of telling stories to Meng. She turned around to look at Instructor Liu, wondering what he was going to do. "Uncle Liu, you said you wanted to tell a story," Meng said when the flight was stable, shaking her short legs on the chair. "Of course, I'm going to start. First, I'll tell 2 stories to moisten my voice first." Hearing Instructor Liu's words, Zhang Han, Ziyan, and Zhao Feng all turned their gaze towards him. They wondered if Instructor Liu was going to tell his own stories about his career. Though Instructor Liu had strong supporters, he must be more powerful than his former colleagues, otherwise, he would have been replaced by others. "Well, this is what I heard from Xiao Ma, my former teammates." Instructor Liu cleared his throat. "When I first joined the army, Xiao Ma always said that after reading time travel novels, he looked up at the sky with a look of piety and said, 'God, can I experience it too? I don't want so many beauties or high positions, a pretty wife is enough for me. I don't want to be a martial artist or scholar, a good brother who develops in an all-round way is enough. I don't want too much money, a small house is enough for me.' God satisfied his wish and hit him with thunder. When he woke up as a time traveler, he saw a beautiful woman sitting at the edge of his bed. 'Elder brother, drink the soup,' the woman said with a gentle voice. Ziyan and Jiang Yanlan were confused. All of a sudden, they burst out laughing. Why? Meng was still confused, not knowing why the others were so happy. She forced a smile and then began looking around with her blinking eyes. "You're talking nonsense. Tell us something real." Instructor Liu laughed and took a glance at Jiang Yanlan secretly. Then he continued, "In the face of a complex and intractable crime scene, experienced Officer Li, with a serious look, squats down on the side in silence. He has consumed 2 packs of cigarettes and is now coughing constantly. Xiao Wang, a new intern, comes to stop him. Officer Li explains, 'Don't worry, I'm okay. This is a chronic complaint since I have been in this business for many years. I'll lose all my ideas if I stop smoking.'" After hearing this, Xiao Wang hesitates for a while and finally says to him, "Although I'm not as experienced as you are, please listen to me if you really regard me as a friend. Don't smoke my cigarettes, okay?" Instructor Liu stopped and everyone burst out laughing. This is so funny. Even Jiang Yanlan was amused and Instructor Liu caught her smile with his sharp eyes. Taking this opportunity, he asked Jiang Yanlan, "I'm good at telling stories, right?" "No." Jiang Yanlan controlled her mood and rolled her eyes at him. "Don't deny that I'm good at telling stories. As a native from Shangjing, you may not understand them thoroughly." "I'm not a native from Shangjing," Jiang Yanlan replied to him in a way different from others. It happened that Instructor Liu wanted to know more about her. "Where are you from? Maybe we are fellow villagers." "I can't be your fellow villager." Silence fell in the cabin. There were not many opportunities for Instructor Liu to chat with Jiang Yanlan, so he grasped it immediately. Most men like to show off in front of their dream lovers, except Instructor Liu, who just wanted to know more about Captain Jiang. This was the main purpose of Instructor Liu's storytelling. Meanwhile, Meng didn't understand the story and looked up at Zhang Han. "Papa, what's Uncle Liu talking about?" asked Meng. "He tells 2 short stories that you can understand when you grow older." Zhang Han touched Meng's head with a smile. "Isn't he telling me stories? Why can't I understand them?" Humphrey Meng snorted and then looked at Zhang Han again. "Papa, I miss the King of Dwarves." "Well, last time I talked about the dwarfs who went to Dragon Island, right? This time they met some fierce opponents." An all-embracing historical story, which was regarded as a spiritual treasure in the Cultivation World, was adapted into an adventure story by Zhang Han. What an interesting journey. No one felt bored at all. The rich lunch prepared on the plane was made of food materials from Mount New Moon, and the dishes were served with red wine and all kinds of other drinks. Their destination was Cloud Sea City, the capital of Xen province in northwest China. It was located in the hinterland of Asia and Europe, adjacent to countries in Central Asia and regarded as the political, economic, cultural, and transportation center of northwest China. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon when they arrived at the airport in Cloud Sea City. It was still hot in July here, and Meng and Xian were both in their summer suits. After putting on their hats, they got off the plane and saw dozens of cars waiting for them on one side of the plane. Zhang Han and his family needn't worry about anything, no matter they were traveling or doing anything else. Zhao Feng would make the perfect arrangements for them in advance. In fact, Zhao Feng needn't do much, too. Liu Qingfeng's men and friends were all over Huanation, and he could arrange everything with just a phone call. Each car was driven by a man wearing a black suit and white gloves. They were led by 4 well-dressed, middle-aged men who greeted Zhang Han and his friends as soon as they got off the plane. Mr. Zhang and Mrs. Welcome to Cloud Sea City. I'm the representative of Chairman Liu in Northwest Huanation. Please feel free to ask me for anything during your visit here. Chairman Liu told us to treat you like himself. The leading man with a long face smiled warmly. He was a talent in business circles, but he knew little about the martial arts world. Therefore, he was unsatisfied with Liu Qingfeng's recent decisions in business. Lots of investments were needed, but Liu Qingfeng gave up so many sources of benefits. The middle-aged man felt that he was no longer trusted by Liu Qingfeng since most of his suggestions were rejected. He longed for a larger stage, and there happened to be some other companies who had recently contacted him. He was offered a higher salary, but what attracted him more was a larger stage for his talents. I'll have a chat with Chairman Liu after completing this task. Qi Xiang kept thinking about it recently. He was ambitious and didn't want to work for Liu Qingfeng anymore, who was too gentle in business. He would rather work in a branch of this new company if permitted by Liu Qingfeng. What was more important now was his task. Thinking about it, Qi Xiang stretched out his right hand towards Zhang Han. Nice to meet you. Zhang Han smiled and shook hands with him. Then Zhang Han took the lead in the way to the cars waiting for them. Huh? Qi Xiang was confused, feeling that the guest was at a higher position than he could imagine. Mr. Zhang and Mrs. from Meng Group, Hong Kong. It is said that Meng Group is at a high position as one of Chairman Liu's important partners in Hong Kong. Anyway, they should be treated well this time. Qi Xiang thought about it and followed Zhang Han to the motorcade. At the same time, Zif, Chen Chengqing, and the warlord of Chan clan got out of the first car and walked towards Zhang Han. Brother Han, Chen Chengqing said hello from afar. Sister Yan, brother-in-law. Zif bounced towards them. Meng, do you miss Auntie Fei Fei? Yes. Meng replied without hesitation. But her expression gave her out. How long have you been here? Xian asked with a smile. We arrived here half an hour before. I see. How is your vacation these days? It's the first time for you to go to his home, right, Humphrey? Have you received the gift from Elder Chen? Xian turned her gaze at the warlord of Chan clan. We didn't have a vacation at all. Zif was a little shy. The warlord of Chan clan coughed and replied, of course I have a gift for her. My grandson's wife is such a good girl, right? Swish. Zif blushed under the gazes of the others. Qi Xiang and the others didn't disturb the Juns. While standing by, they turned their gaze somewhere else. There were more than 20 people on the right side, and some of them were well dressed. Qi Yang was confused when he saw their leader. Isn't that Elder Ma of Guangyai Group? Why is he here in the flesh? He was now negotiating with Guangyai Group for business, and on the other side was the vice president of Guangyai. Now the vice president was standing straight behind that group of people with a big smile. The president of Guangyai Group and many high-level members of the Ma family were all there. Besides them, there were 2 presidents of other famous groups. Qi Xiang was shocked by the scene. Everyone there was a giant in the business circles of Cloud Sea City. What happened next stunned Xiang and his men. When the group of people on the right side saw Zhang Han, they chatted with each other and then strode towards him. What are they going to do, fight? Xiang and his men were frightened. After a while, that group of men slowed down and put on a humble smile. Elder Ma, who was the most influential among them, stretched out both hands and even slightly bent down. Mr. Zhang, Miss Zi, Mr. Chen, and Elder Chen, ha ha ha, welcome to Cloud Sea City. It's a great pleasure for us to meet you today, Mr. Ma said loudly. Boom. Xiang felt as if he was struck by lightning. Who are you? Zhang Han took a glance at Mr. Ma and asked casually. Guanyi Group belongs to the Ma family. I'm Ma Sanliang, and I had the honor of cooperating with your group last time and received one of Mrs.'s songs. I remember you. How about you? Zif looked at him and smiled. Mr. Who talked with us about the contract last time, was not there, so we didn't recognize the other gentleman of your group. I'm sorry. Hearing Zif's introduction, Zhang Han shook hands with Ma Sanliang in the same way he had just before. Xiang and his men were still at a loss. Damn it, what's his background? Even the head of Guanyi Group respects him. Xiang kept wiping sweat from his forehead. He realized that now that he intended to leave Liu Qingfeng for Guanyi Group, he would be driven out of Cloud Sea City if the guests today were not satisfied with him. He even saw the leaders of the other two giant groups smiling obsequiously at Zhang Han. Ma Sanliang shook his head after hearing Zif's words. No, we came here without informing you in advance. We didn't expect to see Mr. Zhang and all of you, and we can't ignore you since you are here. Therefore, we come to greet you and hope that Mr. Zhang and Elder Chen are not bothered by us. Nothing serious. Zhang Han slightly shook his head. When the other leaders were about to say something. Papa, it's hot outside. It's hot? Okay, let's get in the car. After seeing Zhang Han's eyes, they could imagine Zhang Han striding to one of the cars with Meng in his arms. Ma Sanliang and the other businessmen realized it was improper for them to say anything more. We won't disturb you, Mr. Zhang, they said repeatedly. Please take my card and feel free to contact us whenever you need help in Cloud Sea City. When the businessmen took out their cards, what they saw was Zhang Han's back. Fortunately, Zhao Feng was still there. He came to say hello to them and took their cards. After bidding farewell to Zhang Han's friends, the businessmen got in their Audis and left the airport. In the first car, Xiang was still wiping his sweat. What's his background? It's so frightening. Even Chairman Liu is not as influential as him. Silence fell. They began to discuss Zhang Han and his friends. The motorcade moved eastward and soon entered Cloud Sea City. Looking from a distance, they found continuous mountains up ahead, with thin clouds and fog surrounding them. The scenery in the city was pleasant. The city was very prosperous with high-rise buildings, countless pedestrians, and busy cars. Groups of high-level martial artists were coming to the beautiful city. The local branch of the National Security Agency was nervous, but they could do nothing about it. All the martial artists coming there were powerful and they dared not to provoke any one of them. They were so afraid of merciless Zhang and Emperor King, let alone the other elder martial artists who hadn't come out for many years. Fortunately, Yi Danlang sent the Azure Dragon detachment here to help Vermilion Bird, who was in Zhang Han Yang's group, and they were confident in controlling the situation. The local branch of the National Security Agency knew Zhang Han was there and paid close attention to him. They had had meetings with so many families and clans recently. Tell your playboys to behave themselves, and stop them from hanging out and fooling around, otherwise, you may be like the Li family in Hong Kong, which was finally destroyed by Zhang Han Yang. Don't blame me for not reminding you. Therefore, many families held meetings to warn their members not to go outside. They would rather see their children go abroad. Though they knew their children were not always fooling around, they must make full preparations in case some of the boys and girls provoked Zhang Han Yang. Cheek Xiang led the motorcade he had arranged in the first car. They drove all the way to the center of the southern district of Cloud Sea City, through the prosperous commercial street, and finally entered a luxury villa area next to a large park. There was a private manor in the innermost side with 7 villas, which also belonged to Liu Qingfeng. Bang, bang, bang. There was a dense sound of opening and closing doors. Cheek Xiang was faster this time. Standing on one side of the road, he said, "Here is the accommodation for you. You can have a look at it first. If it is not enough for you, there are more single villas outside. It's enough." Zhao Feng nodded at him. The members of the security group preferred to be together, and the 10 people who came with Zhang Han this time would occupy 2 villas at most. The other 5 villas were enough for Zhang Han's family and his friends. "Which one do you like?" Zhang Han asked Meng Meng with a smile. "That one." Meng Meng did not hesitate for long. She blinked her big eyes a few times and then pointed to a smaller villa in the front, which looked like a castle with round corners. "Okay, we want that one." Zhang Han agreed with her happily. So they made such a joyous decision. Zhao Feng carried Xian's 2 suitcases into that villa without hesitation. Zif and Xian would take their suitcases with them every time they went out. Most of the security group members were male, who didn't need much luggage other than carrying some clothes. Chapter 703, The Grand Gathering. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Let's go to the bazaar and then we'll have dinner in Yindu restaurant. The special roast lamb legs and lamb ribs there were said to be delicious. Tomorrow, we'll go to Mountain Nan scenic area and ride horses there. How about the plan? In the villa, Xian looked at Zhang Han and talked about their itinerary. It took her 2 days to make the plan. They didn't have much time. They arrived in Shangjing today, and tomorrow was the only free day for them. The Heavenly Treasure School would be opened the day after tomorrow, and they could spend the whole day there. When the gathering was finished in the afternoon, they would take the flight to Hong Kong as soon as possible. The gate of the worldlet was going to open, and it was not the proper time for Zhang Han to relax. Xian was slightly worried about the opening of the gate of the small world. She was going to see Zhang Han's parents with her daughter, which made Xian nervous. Though Zhang Han had told her that both his parents were easygoing, Xian couldn't remain calm. Zhang Han always agreed with Xian, Meng Meng's mother, so he nodded. "All right, we'll follow your plan. Are we going out to have fun?" Meng Meng cheered in Zhang Han's arms. Her eyes lit up. "Of course, we are here to have fun." Xian smiled in a good mood. She walked towards Meng Meng, stretched out both hands, and pinched the girl's pink cheeks. "Great, let's go out, Papa, we are going to have fun." Meng Meng almost began to dance. Zhang Han's feeling of happiness was rocketing when he saw Meng Meng's smile. He stood up and said, "It's settled, let's go now. Let's go." Meng Meng jumped down to the ground from Zhang Han's arms and bounced to the door. Zhao Feng put down the luggage and followed the family of 3. They saw some people in the yard. Zhao Feng asked, "We are out for fun, anyone with us?" Except for Zhuwash Wang and Mo Chengfeng, who chose to stay here, and the warlord of Chan clan, who went to visit an old friend. All the other friends of Zhang Han, including Wang Ming and his family, went out of their room to join them. They had been to Linhai City, Shangjing City, and Ice City before, but it was the first time for them to go to the core city in northwest China. "Where are we going?" Zif asked while walking out of her villa with Chen Chengqing. "We don't have much time left today. Let's visit the bazaar first and buy something special, then we can go to have roast lamb ribs and lamb legs in Yindu restaurant. Tomorrow, we will go to Mountain Nan scenic area for horse riding and sightseeing. Tonight, help yourself to search for your destination tonight on the internet. Look at you two." Xian scanned Zif and Chen Chengqing with her big eyes. "You've reached the stage of cohabitation. Do you still want to go out and play?" thought Xian. Swish. Zif's face turned red and her lips curled up. "We are in a pure love relationship now." Yes, I didn't mean anything else." Xian showed an expression of approval. Shan Wangzhang forced a smile. Let's go, it's getting dark now. Bazaar means fair, and visiting the bazaar was the same as going to the fair for the local people. Located in Cloud Sea City, the International Bazaar was the largest bazaar in the world, which was known as the Window of Central Asia. They drove all the way to the bazaar. Before they entered it, they saw an endless stream of people and countless shops. So many people here. Meng marveled at it and stretched out her arms towards Zhang Han. Seeing this, Zhang Han held Meng in his arms, and then put her on his shoulders with both hands. I'm so tall now. Meng laughed. Xian pursed her lips, remembering that she had been sitting there. After parking the car outside the bazaar, everyone got off and began to have a good look at a wide range of goods. It was getting dark, and the light turned dim when the surrounding scenery started to blur. The buildings in the light became more charming. There were many attractive goods here, and Meng picked out a small vase, a small hat, and a rattle drum. Xian chose 2 musical instruments. Zif, Shan Wangzhang, and Wang also bought something. They called it a small shopping spree. It's over 6 o'clock. Let's go for dinner first. I've reserved the seats. Xian checked the time and said, Wangzhang, would Elder Chen like to have dinner with us? I'll ask him, but he may be busy now. Shan Wangzhang called his grandfather. The warlord of Chan clan was still chatting with his old friend, and he couldn't get back immediately. According to Zhao Feng, Wang wouldn't have dinner with them, either. The group of people left for Yindu restaurant. Outside the restaurant, they saw the person sitting in the front passenger seat of a Lamborghini in the parking lot opening the door. Instructor Liu got out of the car. Boss. He sounded painful. Seeing his blue eyes, everyone knew what had happened. He must have been beaten up again. They guessed right. The driver's door opened and Jiang Yanlan got out of the car with a satisfied look. Although he was beaten again, Instructor Liu's eyes were not as blue as before, and he successfully got on Jiang Yanlan's car, which was obviously quite different from what had happened to him before. Everyone was attracted by the change. It seems that the instructor's way of being beaten is getting smoother and smoother. Zhao Feng couldn't help murmuring, "Well, Uncle Liu, how did your eyes turn blue?" asked Meng in confusion. She approached Instructor Liu to have a closer look at his eyes. "Well, Uncle Liu needs to refine the makeup." It was a harsh question, but it was not difficult for Instructor Liu. Xian, Zif, and Wang were amused by him, and they made great efforts to remain calm. After all, Instructor had just been beaten, and it was improper for them to laugh at him. Everyone around was used to this scene, as they all knew. The relationship between Instructor Liu and Jiang Yanlan was a little suspicious. While Jiang Yanlan liked to beat Instructor Liu was willing to be beaten. "Let's go for dinner." Zhang Han took a glance at them and then went to the restaurant with Meng's hand in his. His daughter was hungry, and he had no time to talk nonsense with them here. As a restaurant with a history of nearly 100 years in Cloud Sea City, Yindu Restaurant was famous and carried the memories of many local residents. Most importantly, the food here tasted good. Otherwise, it couldn't attract customers merely with its long history. The restaurant had a total of 5 floors. The first floor was in the style of food stalls, with scattered seats arranged intensively, which was very noisy. The large room Xian had booked was on the 3rd floor, and the service charge was nothing to her. After being warmly welcomed into the restaurant by the waiter, Xian showed her mobile phone number. Soon, a beautiful woman in a cheongsam and a small round hat came to guide them to the 3rd floor. When everyone was seated, they started ordering. In addition to the roast lamb ribs and legs, they ordered the special pepper chicken, meatball soup, chowder soup, fried rice noodles, thin-skin steamed buns, and so on. In order to taste all kinds of delicious food, they ordered much more than they could eat and planned to pack the remaining food after dinner. For all the dishes here, including the special roast lamb ribs, their ingredients were not as good as those on Zhang Han's mountain. Zhang Han and Xian had talked about this and decided to let Meng experience the local customs, characteristics, and, of course, the delicious food during their travel. Dishes were soon served one after another and everyone enjoyed themselves at the table. After dinner, they went back to their villa. Meng had been playing outside for a long time, but she didn't feel tired. After watching 2 episodes of cartoons in the villa, she went to bed at 9 o'clock to listen to Papa's story and then fell asleep. At 7 o'clock the next morning, Xian and Meng got up and dressed up. Although it was hot outside, they wore trousers in order to ride the horses today. Before going out, Xian packed 2 coats. It's very hot here, but it's said that the temperature is lower in mountain and scenic area. We'd better take one more coat. As Xian said, when they came to the scenic area, the temperature dropped significantly. The scenic area with fresh air was away from the pollution and noise of the city. What a wonderful place. When it was time to ride the horses, Zhang Han took Meng and Xian for a long ride respectively. They had a simple and happy afternoon. A day flew by. Finally came the day of the opening of Heavenly Treasure School. At 8 o'clock in the morning, Xian helped Zhang Han with his tie after breakfast. Go early and return early. Meng pouted and said, Papa, come back early, otherwise, Meng will miss you. I'll be back in the afternoon. Meng, be obedient to your mom at home. Okay, I'm always a good girl. When Zhang Han went out of the door, he saw Wang, Chen Chenking, Jiang Yanlan, and others waiting for him. Gaix Xingkong, who had just arrived in the morning, was also in the crowd. This large group of people formed a force that no one dared to underestimate. Zhao Feng followed Zhang Han, while Instructor Liu remained in the villain area. Cloud Mountain was not far from here, and the space door for Meng was enough to keep her safe. After the group of people got on the car, Zhao Feng began to drive with Jiang Yanlan sitting in the front passenger seat. Zhang Han and Chen Chenking were in the back seat. Our eldest brother came with me. He heard that many monster-like martial artists are here, and even the weakest of them is in the divine realm. He hasn't heard of any master in the earth realm, so he guessed there shouldn't be anyone at that level, Jiang Yanlan said after the car started. No one is above the earth realm? Jiang Yanlan's words reminded Zhang Han of Ui. That guy is not just in the earth realm. As he got to know more about the martial arts world, Zhang Han found that the systematical classification of chi refining, building base, innateness, and elixir, which he was familiar with, was not recognized here, and few people here had heard about it. Ui had shown his attitude, tone, and strength to Zhang Han, and they were all unique. Zhang Han knew Ui was not an ordinary martial artist like the others. He may be at the peak of the innateness stage, or even at the elixir stage. Zhang Han slightly narrowed his eyes. Anyone at the elixir stage could be the most powerful martial artist in this world, but Zhang Han was not sure enough. Ui was the second person he couldn't see through after his return to the world. The first one was Xian. Is Ui and No Action Immortal the same person? Chapter 704, Exchange with Points. Cloud Mountain was the central peak of Hongxia mountain range not far from the southern suburb of Cloud Sea City, and it was also the highest mountain in the area where Cloud Sea City was located. The mountain was surrounded by clouds all the year round, with its top partly hidden and partly visible. When tourists stood close to the top of the mountain, they felt they could reach for the clouds. Therefore, the mountain was called Cloud Mountain. Cloud Mountain was beautiful with steep cliffs and peaks. There was no way to go up the mountain, and even the mountaineers seldom came here. The shape of Cloud Mountain was like an awl. For ordinary people, they'd better appreciate it from afar than try to challenge it. On this day, however, a group of tourists came to Cloud Mountain. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. If someone was nearby, he could see the vigorous figures walking on the tops of trees towards the top of Cloud Mountain. Although seemingly dangerous, such kind of mountain was like the flat ground in martial artist's eyes. The Heavenly Treasure School, the most mysterious treasure shop, opened only once every few years. Surprisingly, the Heavenly Treasure School opened before the world lit this time. Rich people were capricious. Everyone knew that the Heavenly Treasure School was filled with treasures from the world lit, which was for exchange, and it was common to see martial artists exchange for divine weapons and divine objects here. Most importantly, it was fair and just here. Whether it was a heaven-grade treasure or a holy object, their owner could exchange them with points of corresponding value. After each transaction was completed, the seller had to pay 10% of the points, which was similar to the tax. On the south side of Cloud Mountain, 7 figures were stepping slowly in line on the tops of trees, as if they were just having a walk here. Among them, there were Mugs, the female demon from the Daluo sword sect, a male sect chief, and 5 of Mug's maidservants. Well, the gate of the small world has not opened yet, and my father can't come out. Why does the Heavenly Treasure School open at this time? Can't it be a few days later? How many points can I get with the several treasures I have? I'm not happy at all. Mugs glanced at the male sect chief and complained, "Your sect is too poor." "Well, yes, we are poor in resources." The male chief forced to smile. "I dare not argue with her. Our small sect is far worse than the Luofu sword sect, the top sect in the northwest world lit. You have countless treasures and your father is the sect chief. Alas, why must you compare our sect with yours?" The male sect chief was so depressed, but he dared not complain in front of Mugs. He was proud of the only 2 holy objects he took with him today, but they were borrowed from other sects. "Forget it, I'm here for fun and perhaps I can get something interesting. I didn't expect to be poor one day." It's ironic. Mugs felt bored. That was why she walked slowly, without valuable treasures in exchange for points. There was no use for her to rush to the mountain top. On the east side of the mountain, Shi Fenwu, the little rock, was walking alone, because Zhang Han and Chen Chenqing had killed all his men before. This was just what he wanted. He always liked to be alone. Those 2 guys must be here. Shi Fenwu looked at the top of the mountain and frowned slightly. They won't fight with me here, and I just need to think about how to leave the mountain. They can't resist my secret method and are unable to catch me. Shi Fenwu had been thinking about it all the way. Emperor King was in the divine realm, and Zhang Han Yang was a monster. He was not sure if he could resist the 2 strong men. Let's have another fight after I reach the divine realm. Shi Fenwu was always proud. He was rational and good at making analysis, unlike Yilong Yuan, the devil incarnate, who was arrogant. Shi Fenwu was afraid that Yilong Yuan could challenge heaven one day as long as he reached a certain stage. It was not only because of the rules of the Heavenly Treasure School. There are so many powerful martial artists today, and no one wants to provoke each other. Shi Fenwu looked ahead and saw Mugs and her followers from a distance. There were 3 to 5 people on his left, 2 of whom he had seen before, and they were both God-state strongs. There were so many strong martial artists on the mountain today, some of whom hadn't come out for years. They were all here for the Heavenly Treasure School. 10 minutes after all the forces had gone up the mountain, an Audi motorcade stopped at a road some kilometers away. Zhang Han and his friends got off the cars. Except for their motorcade, there were about 30 luxury cars that belonged to others. According to the rules of the Heavenly Treasure School, all the participants who carried treasures with them could bring 2 subordinates with them. Therefore, except for the famous martial artists, their young generations and subordinates, who were curious about the outside world, could also be seen here. The cars can't get in, and we have to walk there, Zhao Feng said after parking his car. Let's go. Jiang Yanlan nodded. Zhang Han and Chen Chenqing got off the car. After everyone alighted from the cars, they left someone to watch the cars and then rushed towards Cloud Mountain. Soon they came to the foot of the mountain. The top of the mountain was surrounded by clouds and they couldn't see it clearly. Zhang Han, Chen Chenqing, Xuanhuan, Wang, and some other martial artists who had soul sense, began to scan the whole mountain, except for the large group of people on the mountain top. They found nothing abnormal. Zhang Han had stronger spiritual sense of energy than others, and he found a 100-meter-tall object there. That must be the Heavenly Treasure School. The whole building is actually a spirit treasure. Zhang Han looked up at the mountain top again and then flashed towards it. After passing through the cloud area, they saw clearly what was in front of them. The warlord of Chan clan and Wang had experienced it before, but they still felt shocked. A huge pavilion with a height of several hundred meters was on the top of Cloud Mountain. The magnificent pavilion was ancient, which could be seen from its style and decoration. It's said that there are 9 floors in the Heavenly Treasure School, and Zhang Shenwang from the Heavenly Knights sect is the only one who has been to the 7th floor. No one knows what is on the 8th and 9th floors. You can exchange treasures for points on the 1st floor, and get profound grade treasures on the 2nd floor, earth grade treasures on the 3rd floor, heaven grade treasures on the 4th floor, holy grade treasures on the 5th floor, and divine grade treasures on the 6th floor. Only Zhang Shenwang knows what is on the 7th floor. As for the 8th and 9th floors, I'm also curious about them. Warlord of Chan clan sighed with relief while looking at the huge building. The 8th and 9th floors? Zhang Han slightly narrowed his eyes. Now that there were 6th level spirit treasures on the 6th floor and 7th level treasures on the 7th floor, what could he find on the 8th and 9th floors, 8th level and 9th level treasures? It was almost impossible. Even if the Saint Warrior planet was not sealed, there couldn't be such amazing things here. The 9th level spirit treasures were legendary objects even in the Cultivation World. Even so, the Heavenly Treasure School was still an amazing place, at least for the martial arts world. There was a large oval platform on the top of Cloud Mountain. Although it was uneven, it was much smoother than the surface of the mountain. The gate of the 1st floor of the Heavenly Treasure School had not been opened yet, and there were nearly 100 people waiting on both sides of it, except for several strong men in the Divine Realm and many Wu Dao Grandmasters. Most of them were low-level martial artists and young generations. Everyone turned their gaze at Zhang Han's group and began to discuss as soon as they appeared. They are coming. Merciless Zhang, Emperor King, Warlord of Chan Clan, Gaik Xingkong, Wang, Mo Chengfeng. It's frightening that so many famous, strong people gather together. What an amazing group. There are few people in the martial arts world who can challenge them, right? Wow, both Merciless Zhang and Emperor King are handsome. Why do you cover my mouth? Zhang Han and his friends were greeted by many martial artists on the mountain top. Here you are. Yi Danlang smiled and turned his gaze at Jiang Yanlan. Now you are one of them, Humphrey. Jiang Yanlan snorted, I'm doing your task. Do you know I'm provoked every day? Yi Danlang laughed and shook his head. Elder Chen, a man in his 50s, who was in the Divine Realm, smiled and said, long time no see. Long time no see. The warlord of Chan clan nodded. Is the young man Zhang Hanyang? It is better to see you once than to hear of you 100 times. While many people came to say hello, someone who had no relationship with the warlord of Chan clan chose to ignore them. As for the several famous martial artists, they thought it unnecessary to join in the fun. Yi Long Yuan and Shi Fengwu stared at Zhang Han but didn't say anything. Humphrey Muggs rolled her eyes at Zhang Han. They didn't want to get into trouble here. Buzz. All of a sudden, there was a buzzing sound above the Heavenly Treasure School, and blue light lit up the whole pavilion. Crack. The gate was pushed open and more than 30 puppets in white robes and huge hats came out. They dressed like the man in bamboo hat but were much cleaner than him. Puppets at the early stage of innateness? Zhang Han was surprised. He didn't expect that the Heavenly Treasure School was so powerful. A puppet at the middle stage of innateness? Behind the puppets in white came a puppet in black with a hat on, and its face seemed to be covered with black fog. The puppet said in a low voice, the Heavenly Treasure School is open, please enter the 1st floor to exchange for points. He announced the beginning of the activity of the Heavenly Treasure School directly without any opening speech. Clatter. It begins. It's cool, I can have a look at the treasures inside. The width of the gate was more than 10 meters, and all the people outside soon entered the pavilion. This was a circular floor with rooms on both sides. When someone entered a room, there was a blue glow at the door. One person per room. The warlord of Chan clan said, "No one else is here, and we can go to exchange for points." After he entered a room, Wang, Mo Chengfeng, Gai Xingkong, and the other 5 people entered the rooms on the same side. "Brother Han, let's go to the front. Let's have a look here first." Zhang Han slightly shook his head, intending to check everything here. Someone soon came out of the room near the gate. "Third uncle, I've exchanged for 38 points. I've exchanged for 170 points with 2 treasures. The number of my points is 370, which is larger than yours. I can get some ideal treasures this time." It sounded that no one got many points. While Zhang Han was thinking about it, the warlord of Chan clan came out of the gate. "Haven't you gone there yet? Grandfather, how many points did you get?" asked Chen Chenking. "I exchanged 3 kinds of holy objects for 1,400 points. The price of heaven-grade treasures here ranges from 10 to 50 points. The price of holy-level treasures ranges from 500 to 1,000 points. As for divine-level treasures, their price ranges from 5,000 to 10,000 points. Each treasure is priced according to its attributes." The warlord of Chan clan explained. Although Zhang Han and Chen Qingqing would soon hear about these tips, he decided to tell them in advance since they were here. Chapter 705. How could he get so many points? "Well, I can get nearly 1,000 points, right? Let me have a try." Chen Qingqing and his grandfather had prepared sufficiently, bringing with them 5 holy objects in total and some heaven-grade treasures this time, though these heaven-grade treasures did not bring considerable benefits to the final points. While speaking, Chen Qingqing stepped into a room ahead. As for Zhang Han, he did not move at this moment but looked around casually. Most of the people who came out of their rooms were discussing with each other. The ones who ranked last merely obtained 20 to 30 points, while the man who got the most points never met Zhang Han before. However, the warlord of Chan clan knew that he was a senior martial artist in the divine realm, who got more than 7,300 points. It was an open secret that how many points a man got because others would see as he exchanged something. They, therefore, mentioned the points while chatting, during which many of them shook their heads and sighed with emotion. The Heavenly Treasure School probably has broken the record with the lowest points this time. Whenever the gate of the small world opens, people will exchange for tens of thousands of points. That's right, it was really easy for those big sects to get 70,000 to 80,000 points before, and they sometimes offered 10 or so divine weapons in exchange for what they wanted. What a big deal. Unfortunately, we won't see such a scene this year. 70,000 to 80,000 points can only make the owner go to the 6th floor. One of the elders shook his head slightly and sighed. Since the Heavenly Treasure School is a truly mysterious place, no one dares to make trouble here. Therefore, none of us know what treasures are on the 7th, 8th, and 9th floors. No, I remember that Zhang Shenwang, the former patriarch of the Heavenly Knights sect, once went to the 7th floor, but he never told others any details. Moreover, I'm not sure whether he was the first to go there. While they were chatting, Gai Xingkong, Wang, Mo Chengfeng, Yi Danlang, and Jiang Yanlan came out. Hasn't Han gone in yet? As Gai Xingkong walked forward, he smiled and said, "That's great. With 980 points, I can exchange them for 2 desirable holy objects this time. I only gained over 510 points and don't know if I can exchange for something I'm stuck on." Jiang Yanlan curled her lips. "Don't you know that Mugs only got hundreds of points as well?" Yi Danlang glanced at Jiang Yanlan. She was also the princess of a sect in the worldlet. The people like her, including Yilong Yuan and Shi Fenwu, did not have many practical treasures if the gate of the small world was closed. I only obtained more than 300 points, which are just enough to exchange for a holy object. Mo Chengfeng sighed. Well enough, I barely got 221 points, Wang said with a faint smile. Why did you get so few points? Xingkong felt somewhat surprised. His words stunned Wang slightly. After pondering calmly for 2 seconds, he slowly uttered several words. I'm so poor. It was so heart-wrenching, old fellow. It's okay for you to get over 200 points. I only got 28 points at the expense of all my belongings, a middle-aged man said feebly after his mouth trembled a few times. Stop comparing. I didn't intend to tell you that I just gained 21 points. Under such circumstances, the warlord of Chan clan and Xingkong got more points than they did. However, Zhang Han also learned that they borrowed some treasures from others in accordance with what they said. Soon, Chen Qingqing came out with a happy expression. 1050, that's not bad, brother Han, why haven't you gone there yet? Just have a try. Okay. Zhang Han nodded and went straight to the room nearby. Swish, swish, swish. The instant he moved, many people looked over. Merciless Zhang is about to go in. It's said that he possesses 2 kinds of divine objects, large quantities of holy objects, and countless heaven-grade treasures on the mountain. I wonder if he'll get loads of points. Not necessarily, he probably isn't willing to take out the divine objects. A lot of people were talking about the matter, but Mugs suddenly considered a possibility. Will he sell my demon dancing sword? Zhang Han Yang once had said that he would sell the sword if there was a chance. If he dares to sell it, I'll kill him when the gate of the small world opens. At this point, Mugs became a little angry all of a sudden. Yuan's face darkened. After staring at Zhang Han for a while, he snorted but said nothing. Shi Fengyu looked at Yuan, sneering as usual. Little Rock Shi Fengyu's sneer was indeed a mystery among the younger generation of the worldlet. No one was aware of what he laughed at, since he sneered whenever others saw him. Nobody could figure out what he was thinking. He once got much credit from plenty of elders of the surrounding sects for making a great contribution, but he actually sneered in such a peaceful atmosphere, which cooled the air down and embarrassed everyone present. Under everyone's gaze, Zhang Han walked into the room. Then, the door was covered with rays of light. Oh, puppets! The milky white room, with several shining gemstones, looked very tidy. In the center, there was a large desk and 2 chairs on both sides. A man in a blue robe was sitting there, with his face glowing, and Zhang Han failed to see his expression clearly. Zhang Han knew the specific situation after taking a look. The white-robed puppet outside was in charge of fighting, while the black-robed puppet, with greater strength, was the upgraded version of the white one. As for the cyan-robed puppet, it consisted of soul sense and was used to detect treasures. After Zhang Han sat down, the cyan-robed puppet said in a low voice, "Put the treasures you're going to exchange for points on the table." Zhang Han looked at it several times, and the space ring on his right hand flashed. As a hot wave surged at him, the roaring flame saber suddenly appeared on the desk. The cyan-robed puppet habitually stretched out its bloodless hands and pulled out the roaring flame saber. This time, 2 dark whirlpools, like eyes, appeared on its face, which was hidden under the fluctuation. After staring at the saber for 3 seconds, it opened its mouth and said, 87,000 points. Oh, well. Zhang Han nodded. A divine weapon would exchange for at least 5,000 points. Although the divine weapons were also regarded as the 5th stage spirit treasures, their properties and power were widely divergent. Just like the students in a good university, some of them were good at studying, while others performed poorly. Therefore, the prices would vary from treasures to treasures, though they were all at the same level. The roaring flame saber was worth nearly 9,000 points, because the weapons, such as sabers, spears, swords, and halberds, were really popular. Zhang Han, however, was aware that the value of the Thunder Yang tree would exceed 50,000 points. According to their judging standard, the Thunder Yang tree was much more valuable than most of the 5th stage spirit treasures. After Zhang Han nodded, The cyan-robed puppet took the roaring flame saber away directly. Then, Zhang Han took out the demon dancing sword. The cyan-robed puppet drew out the demon dancing sword and stared at it for 3 seconds. The divine weapon was rare now, but it was not really valuable. 431. The cyan-robed puppet quickly gave a response and put the demon dancing sword on the desk. Fine. The demon dancing sword, belonging to Mugs the female demon, was directly sold. Then Zhang Han took out Yi Long Yuan's golden armor and threw it on the desk casually. 412. Okay. Zhang Han pondered for a while after nodding, and he eventually took out a jade bottle, in which there was a medicinal pellet that had just been refined recently. The white medicinal pellet, with ripples on the surface, looked like a shining star. 231. One medicinal pellet actually was equivalent to half of a holy object, which would astonish other people once the news spread. Zhang Han, however, shook his head slightly and said calmly, "No action immortal, can't you recognize this medicinal pellet?" As soon as he finished speaking, the cyan-robed puppet fell silent. 1 second, 2 seconds. 5 seconds later, the cyan-robed puppet moved again. It reached out its hands to pick the bottle up, glancing at it and saying slowly, "A supreme-grade Daluo pellet, 1,000 points." Hearing what he said, Zhang Han nodded, but he still sized up the cyan-robed puppet whose expression had changed. Meanwhile, he took out another medicinal pellet, a high-grade blue flame pellet, 700 points. Then, Zhang Han took out 8 medicinal pellets in one go. A top-grade chi-repelling pellet, 1,300 points. A middle-grade evil-destroying pellet, 700 points. A high-grade dew-condensing pellet, 900 points. These 10 medicinal pellets exchanged for a total of 9,300 points. Their value indeed exceeded that of the roaring flame saber, which was counted as a divine weapon. Zhang Han took advantage of 4 holy objects and more than 30 heaven-grade treasures to refine these 10 medicinal pellets. In fact, their recent value was several times higher than before after being refined by Zhang Han. How terrible the profits they brought were! But no one, except Zhang Han, was able to refine pills in such a method. The next moment, Zhang Han took out some treasures that he gained from the disciples of the Wind Snow School, the Heavenly Elixir Sect, and the Halan clan in the Western world. A low-grade Yuanzhen pellet, 30 points. A low-grade Stone Wind pellet, 50 points. A middle-grade Perfumed Promotion pellet, 150 points. Their points apparently polled apart. However, the medicinal pellet of the best quality from the Heavenly Elixir Sect was worth more than 400 points. Together with various treasures, these objects exchanged for a total of 1730 points. The divine weapon, Roaring Flame Saber, was worth 8,700 points. The divine object, Demon Dancing Sword, exchanged for 431 points, while the golden armor was sold at 421 points. Although the last 2 holy objects did not exchange for considerable points, Zhang Han was satisfied with the result. After all, it was indeed decent for these objects to be bought since they had owners. The 10 medicinal pellets refined by Zhang Han were worth 9,300 points, while the treasures he obtained from the forces, such as the Heavenly Elixir Sect and the Halan clan, brought him 1,730 points. Finally, he got 20,573 points in total. This was truly a huge number, which was far enough to exchange for 2 5th-stage spirit treasures. Moreover, he could exchange for at most 4 5th-stage spirit treasures, but those treasures costing 5,000 points each would possibly be of no use. In fact, there were still several holy objects in Zhang Han's space ring, but he did not intend to take them out. In his view, putting them back in the medicine field and keeping them for refining medicinal pellets were better than exchanging them directly. This is your token. As the cyan-robed puppet took out a palm-sized token and transmitted some energy to it, the number 20,573, representing Zhang Han's points, appeared on it. But at this moment, Zhang Han was about to say something. The aura around the cyan-robed puppet changed slightly, which stopped Zhang Han. He chuckled and said, "He ran so fast." After finishing speaking, he stood up quickly and walked out of the room. The instant he left, two rays of light appeared on the cyan-robed puppet's face. They were no longer in the shape of dark whirlpools but looked like human pupils. In the meantime, a murmur sounded. "This guy is quite interesting." After Zhang Han walked out of the room, the warlord of Chan clan and some others were still chatting. Lots of people on the right had gone upstairs to the second floor. Chen Qingqing approached Zhang Han quickly and asked with curiosity, "Brother Han, how many points did you get?" Swish, swish, swish. The warlord of Chan clan, Gaik Xingkong, Zhuosh Wang, Mo Chengfeng, Wang Ming, Rong Jiaxin, and Zhao Feng all looked at Zhang Han at this point. Everyone knew each other's points clearly. So far, it was Yi Tanlang who got the most points, 1,957 points in total. They considered that Zhang Han's points would be more than Yi Tanlang's, so they were all curious. Seeing their expressions, Zhang Han smiled helplessly and took out the token in his pocket. The number on it stunned everyone present. How many points did he get? 20,573? Oh, my God, what did he exchange for? How could he get so many points? Chapter 706, Yi Longyuan purchased his treasure. How did he obtain more than 20,000 points? Yi Tanlang felt somewhat confused since he failed to figure out what Zhang Han had exchanged for. A divine weapon? The roaring flame saber? He should not even have gained 10,000 points. How did he get the remaining 10,000 points? Did he exchange two other divine objects for these points? He had not heard that Zhang Han took any divine objects from his mountain with him. How did he gain so many points with other treasures? Everyone present was puzzled about these questions. Although they were all surprised, they did not ask Zhang Han in detail but just talked over their points. After all, the objects in exchange for points were private. Everyone looked at each other and burst into laughter all of a sudden. "Brother Han, you're so awesome." Chen Qingqing gave Zhang Han a thumbs up. "You do surprise us at any time." Rong Jiaxin smiled sweetly as her eyes were filled with pride. Gaik Xingkong looked around for a few seconds and said with a smile, "Let's go upstairs now, it's time to exchange for treasures." So, all of them walked inside. More than 20 people, who were looking on, were all dumbfounded after hearing what these people said here. Did I mishear? Did he get over 20,000 points? Wow, getting more points when the gate of the small world opens than usual is completely groundless. Look, Zhang Han got more than 20,000 points. Didn't he? He is so ruthless that he deserves to be called Merciless Zhang. He makes remarkable achievements in every field. Hearing these comments, Chen Qingqing and his companions shook their heads, smiling. Zhang Han kept calm and did not say anything, for he certainly would not feel proud of himself. He just got over 20,000 points. If such a number had impressed Zhang Han, he would have directly gained points by exchanging the Thunder Yang tree and the Thunder Yang flower. If so, even the powerful sects in the world might not be able to surpass him. It was undeniable that the Thunder Yang tree was of significant power. He saw plenty of people looking at the display cabinets on the second floor. Each small box, placed in the cabinets, contained the treasure matching with the corresponding floor. The second floor, as the starting point, stored profound grade treasures and the first stage spirit treasures, so only a small number of people, about 1/3 of the total, stopped here. The second floor seemed to cover an area of 500 square meters, on which placed various display cabinets. The large one in the corner was more than 3 meters high. After glancing around, Zhang Han knew that these first-stage spirit treasures were just a small part of the treasures chosen to exhibit. Some of them were of low quality, while the good ones were piled up disorderly as well. Of course, once a martial artist was promoted to a chi strength master, the first-stage spirit treasures would become less useful for him. Therefore, The people here were just wandering around. Since the Heavenly Treasure School would open for a day, they had hours to broaden their horizons here. "Let's go upstairs," Gaik Sinkong said. They came here with the purpose of exchanging for the holy objects, the divine objects, or the heaven-grade treasures that were helpful for themselves. But there stood more people on the third floor than on the second one, those who just came here to watch the fun or who had obtained a few points among the group led by Zhang Han stayed. The rest of them kept going upstairs and saw more people on the fourth floor, where stored a variety of heaven-grade treasures. Among them, some were of great use. The stairs to the fifth floor were on the innermost side. Zhang Han and the others heard a lot of remarks in the crowd while walking along the way. "This Tang sword looks really fantastic and is extremely sharp, considering that its integration degree with spiritual force reaches 30%. I decide to use my points in exchange for it because it's capable of helping make qualitative improvement in a battle." That's true. This sword looks very cool and stylish. Leaving aside its power, its appearance is suitable for me instead of you. This triple grass is one of the main ingredients in refining the chi replenishing pellets. It's a pity that the heavenly elixir sect was destroyed. I had an acquaintance with their protector Nu, who only had served as a protector for less than a month and once bragged to me. However, I didn't expect that merciless Zhang ruined the heavenly elixir sect. It's totally beyond my imagination. Now, we can only wait until the gate of the world lit opens if we want the medicinal pellet, for merely a few people know how to refine elixirs. Hush, keep your voice down. Here are merciless Zhang and his companions. Under people's gaze, Zhang Han and his companions came to the end of the room as others chatted. The number of people planning to go to the fifth floor suddenly declined. Even Zhaofeng, Rong Jiaxin, Wang Ming stayed on the fourth floor. That was because only people with at least 450 points were accessible to the fifth floor. At the entrance of the stairs stood a black-robed puppet who was responsible for guarding this place. Those who went upstairs did not need to show their tokens because it could sense whether their points were enough. If not, it would reach out to stop them. Zhang Han, Jiang Yanlan, Chen Chenqing, Yi Danlang, and Jiwash Wang all reached the fifth floor. They saw relatively few people on the fifth floor, some of whom were familiar with them. Yi Longyuan, Shi Fenwu, some elders with calm looks, and about 5 or 6 young men were in sight. They were all well-qualified martial artists, whose aura was almost the same as that of Yi Longyuan. They, however, had never shown up in public before. In the era when the gate of the small world closed, they did not intend to fight for anything. They glanced at Zhang Han and Chen Chenqing several times. Although they were somewhat afraid, they did not care about them very much. The appearance of the world lit forebodes the grand occasion of martial arts. The current era, namely the ruling era, is just a joke. A majority of them thought so. Zhang Han Yang. Suddenly, an extremely angry voice sounded. Swish. Many people turned their heads and saw Mugzu being surrounded by traces of evil spirit. "You actually dared to sell my demon dancing sword." As soon as she finished speaking, a lot of people nearby were a little stunned. They heard that Zhang Han had robbed Mugzu of her demon dancing sword. In fact, they subconsciously considered that perhaps Zhang Han Yang would apologize to Mugzu's father, namely the head of the Luofu sword sect in the end after the gate of the small world opened. They, however, had never expected that Zhang Han actually sold the demon dancing sword before the world lit came into being. They wondered if he wanted to fight against the Luofu sword sect. Admittedly, leader Mu of the Luofu sword sect was very protective of his families and disciples. But Zhang Han just glanced at her coldly and then reminded her, "Even if I sold a demon dancing sword, you still owe me 10,000 crystal stones." Hearing what he said, the other men all froze. Even Mugz was stunned for a moment, but then she sneered and said, "Ha ha, Zhang Han Yang, you're so bold. We, the Luofu sword sect, can only get 80,000 to 100,000 crystal stones in a year. How dare you ask us to give you 1/10 of them?" "Well, I'll ask my father to meet you in person in a few days. Hiss. The elders present, who had seen Leader Mu's movements, all gasped. They were afraid that Zhang Han would be defeated in the face of Leader Mu, though his strength was terrifying. Zhang Han frowned slightly and ignored her. He did not give any response, but someone else did. Jiang Yanlan glanced at Mugs. She said, "The Luofu sword sect supporting you are indeed powerful, but perhaps Zhang Han backer is much more formidable than yours." What? Both Shi Fengyu and Yi Longyuan sensed something in a twinkling of an eye. Even Mugs felt a little stunned. Did Zhang Han have a powerful background? It stood a good chance. After all, not everyone was so talented in martial arts, let alone the overwhelming strength Zhang Han owned. At this moment, the hall fell silent. Jiang Yanlan stopped speaking but kept going with Zhang Han, intending to check everything here in detail. But in fact, among this group, only Zhang Han was qualified to go to the 6th floor. After all, 5,000 was not a small number. Peace was finally restored in the hall again. A majority of people were looking at the dazzling divine stage treasures in the display cabinets. As for Yi Longyuan, he subconsciously thought that Zhang Han was afraid of him since he did not find his golden armor after walking around. Mugs was supported by her father. But Yi Longyuan, as the devil incarnate, was so confident about his strength because he improved it through successive battles. Ha ha. Yi Longyuan glanced at Mugs and sneered. However, when he was about to burst into laughter, a familiar sneer rang out nearby. Yi Longyuan frowned and looked over. He saw Shi Fengyu looking at him with a sneer. Swish. As Yi Longyuan was about to say something, Shi Fengyu took 2 steps slowly to the side. On the left of the showcase behind him placed the shining golden armor. Boom. Yi Longyuan's expression froze. He walked over with vigorous strides to take a look. My god, the golden armor values 613 points. Damn it. Yi Longyuan got angry in an instant. He happened to have 613 points, so there was something fishy behind this standard. Did the store bully the guests? Yi Longyuan had the urge to make trouble, but his facial muscles trembled as he caught sight of the black-robed puppet beside the stairs. At this time, he also thought of the masters in the Earth Realm being killed here because they created a disturbance. Are you going to use your points in exchange for it? If not, please get out of the way. Shi Fengyu said while sneering. Get lost. Yi Longyuan gritted his teeth and put the token, presenting 613 points, on the treasure. Clatter. With the light flickering, the golden armor slowly floated out. Yi Longyuan immediately grabbed it, looking at Zhang Han in anger and saying, "You'll repay 100-fold one day." The next moment, he walked to the stairs in rage, planning to leave. He glanced at Shi Fengyu before he left. You don't have to be sarcastic. In fact, even if you're sold, you cannot get 20,000 crystal stones. Yi Longyuan left without any hesitation after saying that. As for Shi Fengyu, he felt a little embarrassed as he recalled what Zhang Han had said to him in the past. You are so poor that you don't even have a divine object, so you owe me 20,000 crystal stones. I'm rich. Shi Fengyu looked at Zhang Han beside him again. At this point, Mugs also exchanged all her points for the demon dancing sword, which infuriated her. She, however, could not lose her temper. Besides, she could not defeat Zhang Han now. Under many people's different gazes, Zhang Han looked around and went straight to the stairs inside. What, does he have more than 5,000 points? Mugs and Shi Fengyu were somewhat stunned, while the others also gave up checking the treasures in front of them but looked at him. They saw Zhang Han walking up leisurely and the black-robed puppet directly let him go. Chapter 707, Going Up to the 7th Floor. Zhang Han would rather exchange 20,573 points for some useful divine-grade treasures than various low-grade ones. These treasures, though not small in number, brought different benefits to diverse people. There were too many treasures of great use. but Zhang Han had planned to choose two of them that were the most suitable for himself at present. Actually, since Zhang Han possessed 8,000 thunderclouds after absorbing the thunder spirit, he felt somewhat uncomfortable. He had to separate the clouds from time to time, for the T-wood thunder would make trouble once the clouds got closer. That was to say, the 8,000 thunderclouds and the T-wood thunder did not truly belong to Zhang Han, as they would often cause trouble. Zhang Han obviously knew that, but he was also aware that all these would belong to him after he entered the innateness stage. Though he needed a variety of treasures, he still intended to take a look at them in person. When he walked to the 6th floor, he found that there were 5 people. 4 elders and a man seemingly in his early 30s were watching the display boxes carefully. Catching sight of Zhang Han, they all glanced at him with calm expressions. It was normal for masters to reach the 6th floor when the gate of the small world opened. There were a lot of treasures on this floor. Zhang Han glanced around and found that there were a considerable number of divine objects displayed here, accounting for 1/10 of the total number of the heaven-grade treasures on the 5th floor. There were hundreds of heaven-grade treasures, 50 or 60 divine-grade treasures in the display cabinets, which were indeed invaluable. The materials stored by the Heavenly Treasure School are undoubtedly remarkable in this world. Zhang Han gasped in admiration inwardly. Now that the spirit treasures exhibited in public were quite amazing, Zhang Han believed that the number of spirit treasures collected by the Heavenly Treasure School would be definitely beyond imagination. I wonder if there's any 6th stage spirit treasure. Zhang Han looked through the cabinets, finding that the puppet standing at the stairs was no longer in a black robe, but in a purple robe. A puppet at the last stage of innateness. Zhang Han could not figure out its true strength with his soul sense, so he just guessed. He deemed that it would be too impolite to detect in other sects' territory. In fact, it was indeed a provocative behavior in the cultivation world. After sizing it up, Zhang Han looked away. He looked at the 5 divine objects on a platform ahead. Every time he probed one of them with his soul sense, he could hear a series of introductions. Certainly, they were delivered by the secret voice transmission. If the sound was as loud as the one which was transmitted through the loudspeaker, the chaos would possibly make people's scalp numb. The dark bone lotus, as the main ingredient for refining the evil-leading pills, is able to mobilize the evil spirit within a 100-mile radius and help masters to improve greatly. However, it's a treasure of no use, which isn't worth 5,300 points at all and is even less valuable than some holy objects. The Xuanhuan rock is counted as a special treasure that is beneficial to improve the power of weapons, since people may have a chance to obtain the elemental power from it. It values 6,000 points, but it isn't suitable for me. Zhang Han slightly shook his head. This piece of Xuanhuan rock was about 20 centimeters in length and width. As long as it came into play, it was capable of upgrading the spirit treasures from the 4th stage to the 5th stage. Moreover, like the roaring flame saber with the fire attribute, it could provide martial artists with the elementary powers sometimes. There were too many attributes, including not only the 5 elements of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, but also wind and thunder, sand, corrosion, illusion, soul, suppression, gravity, and so on. Nevertheless, no matter what attributes a treasure possessed, it would be more powerful than the one without any attributes. As for this Xuanhuan rock, it was a worthy treasure. Were the treasures here very affordable? Of course not. As Zhang Han looked at the next treasure, his mouth trembled slightly. The 3-flame flower petal is so useless that it can only improve the strength of soul sense a little and is not even as helpful as many other holy objects. How could it value 7,300 points? The sea branch is somewhat serviceable for cultivators specializing in methods relating to water, but it isn't worth 7,500 points. Zhang Han shook his head while staring at them. Of course, he only made comments inwardly and would not speak out. The next showcase stored 5 divine objects as well. In this way, Zhang Han checked 20 divine objects in succession and finally came to a conclusion. The leader of the Heavenly Treasure School is seemingly a marvelous person. It was somewhat difficult to make out the real value of many of these treasures, that was to say, some of them were cost-effective, while some others were more value for points. Of course, most of them were of excellent quality and reasonable points. 3 of the 5 people chose a treasure respectively in succession. Judging by the points they spent from afar, Zhang Han found that only one person used moderate points in exchange for a treasure, while the other 2 paid more for the treasures. Although many people were aware of such tricks, they still respected the Heavenly Treasure School, because they could only get these fair and just treasures by right of this platform. There were only over 55th stage spirit treasures here, so Zhang Han finished checking them within about half an hour. Zhang Han frowned slightly at this point. The Cyan Yang Dewdrop labeled 5,300 points is worth at least tens of thousands of points. I don't know whether it's a gift or no. Action Immortal did not figure out its true value. Unfortunately, the Cyan Yang Dewdrop is merely capable of improving the spiritual sense mind trick. If it were the Cyan Thunder Dewdrop, it may help increase my thunder clouds to 8,500. Zhang Han sighed while pondering. This Cyan Yang Dewdrop, with strong power, could bestow a Chi Strength Master with the spiritual sense mind trick or help him take the lead in cultivating the soul sense. See first. Actually, it shared some effects with the method Zhang Han used before, though the result it brought was far worse than Zhang Han's. Even so, it was still a very awesome treasure. The treasures here are quite many. Except for the 21 divine weapons, there are 36 divine objects, but none of them are suitable for me. Zhang Han frowned as his eyes narrowed. After thinking for a while, Zhang Han focused on the purple-robed puppet at the entrance of the stairs inside and walked straight over. His movement immediately attracted the attention of the other 5 people. They had been hesitating about what to exchange for with their remaining points before, for they took a fancy to plenty of treasures. However, as they noticed Zhang Han, they changed their mind. What is he going to do? Does he want to go up to the 7th floor? I guess you're wrong. The man in his early 30s sneered and said, only Jiang Shenwang has been there for decades. I remember that someone once said that only those with at least 100,000 points are accessible to the 7th floor. It was just long ago. One of the elders shook his head and said, even the people possessing 100,000 points failed to go up later, and no one knows who is qualified. I heard that there were 5 people whose points exceeded 100,000, but none of them were permitted to go upstairs. To people's surprise, only Jiang Shenwang, with 50,000 points, reached the 7th floor, leaving a much-told tale. Maybe the requirements are related to the leader of the Heavenly Treasure School's interests. Considering that all of them were masters at the Heaven Peak stage, I deem that Zhang Han Yang is not qualified even if he breaks through to the Divine Realm. In their view, Zhang Han was looking for trouble. If he offended the puppet who guarded the floor without any reason, his points would probably be deducted, which had happened before. As Zhang Han gradually approached the puppet, they chuckled. Someone won't turn back unless he hits the wall. Even the oldest master in the Divine Realm present said in a low voice, Zhang Han Yang, he's still too naive, is it true? Hiss. What? When the 5 of them saw Zhang Han stop in front of the purple-robed puppet and continue to go upstairs in less than a second, they were all dumbfounded. Their eyes widened and they stared at Zhang Han in disbelief. Did he go upstairs? What is going on? After coming to their senses, they held their breath all of a sudden. Could it be that the requirement made by the Heavenly Treasure School for entering the 7th floor this time very low? It must be so. Now that he can go upstairs, so can we. Let's go. Therefore, they went to the stairs inside together. Your Honor, we also want to go up to the 7th floor. The elder in the Divine Realm stared at the purple-robed puppet with eagerness and bowed to it. But the puppet replied coldly, retreat now. What? The elder in the Divine Realm was stunned. By virtue of my points, I'm supposed to be qualified to go upstairs, right? However, the purple-robed puppet was too lazy to give a response this time. The old man in the divine realm felt a little suspicious, but he was so cautious that he did not speak any more. As for the man in his early 30s, he frowned and said, "Why could Zhang Han go upstairs but we couldn't? It's impossible for Zhang Han to get more points than us, right? What's more?" Before he finished his words, the purple-robed puppet suddenly raised its head slightly. Boom! The 5 of them could not help trembling. Their faces turned pale, which was not because of the purple-robed puppet's movement. In fact, he did not take any action at all. 2,000 points were deducted from each person. Damn it. The 5 of them instantly retreated while cursing inwardly and trembling with anger. But they were definitely all shocked. Zhang Han seemed to be the second person who entered the 7th floor of the Heavenly Treasure School in the past 100 years. Zhang Han. Their expressions changed, and no one knew what they were thinking. As for Zhang Han, he was on the 7th floor at this moment. The space, twice as large as that of the 6th floor, still stored 5th stage treasures. But their quality was much higher than that of those downstairs. Moreover, the instant Zhang Han saw 3 of the 5 treasures on the counter in front of him, his eyes narrowed slightly. What good objects! That's great, but the points, the numbers made Zhang Han's face change slightly. Each treasure valued no less than 20,000 points, and even the least valuable treasure on the counter was worth 20,800 points. In other words, he could not afford them. Zhang Han, however, was still confident, ignoring the points. He concentrated on sizing them up. It's actually a Yunfeng stone. Once its energy is absorbed by a martial artist, he could directly break through to the innateness stage from the foundation late stage. Its power is just slightly lower than that of the Thunder Yang wood. The desert golden bead, as the main object for cultivating the duplication technique, is of good quality. What? Is there the Thunder Yang grass? As Zhang Han looked at the 1 square meter crystal blue lawn in the center of the showcase, his expression changed slightly. He owned the Thunder Yang tree and the Thunder Yang flower on his mountain. Once he got the Thunder Yang grass, the Thunder Yang crystal, and the Thunder Yang sand, he could create a real treasure land. However, this was a long-term plan. As a matter of fact, Zhang Han did not expect that the Thunder Yang grass that was difficult to find actually appeared here. He was a little tempted for a moment, but as he saw the points, 48,000, he was dumbfounded all of a sudden and thought of an old saying, much cry and little wool. Chapter 708, The Successful Exchange. As long as Zhang Han acquired the Thunder Yang grass, he would obtain 3 out of the 5 kinds of Thunder Yang spirit treasures. Not only would that better the territory, but it would also make the crystal stone mineral vein under the mountain more condensed, accelerating its forming speed. But gaining 48,000 points was no joking matter. Zhang Han cast a few glances around and then shifted his gaze to the side. Suddenly, he once again found a treasure that was somewhat appealing to him. A divine object, the Serene World Stone. Zhang Han strode over and stared at it closely. The price was 20,500 points. He had enough points to exchange for it. Back then in the relic of Shenzhen, Zhang Han had suppressed all the talents from the world lit by himself and robbed Muxuan and Yilong Yuan of their divine weapons just for the purpose of getting that holy object, the Serene World Stone. In the end, after refining it into 2 strands of hair, Zhang Han finally opened the space door at the critical moment and turned the tide. If Zhang Han had not prepared this in advance, the consequences would be beyond his imagination. The divine object in front of him, the Serene World Stone, though was only the size of a palm, was a spirit treasure very close to the 6th stage. In Zhang Han's view, it was worth at least 30,000 points, but it was merely sold for 20,500 points. With this stone, the area can cover half of Earth. Zhang Han was a little tempted. He was very confident in his safety. The only thing he was worried about was his wife and daughter. Last time, he spent Xian's precious strand of hair, so now he felt a little insecure. Now, as long as he could buy the 5th stage Serene World Stone, his security level would be several grades higher. At the very least, his family of 3 would not be living at a distance of half of Earth, and they would seldom be separated from one another. Although he was enticed, Zhang Han's expression was still calm. He continued to walk to the side and spotted some more advanced 5th stage spirit treasures there. This 9-dragon halberd looks not bad, but it's a little expensive as it is sold at a price of 30,000 points. Oh, this blue jade gourd is really a brilliant treasure. It only costs 50,000 points. It's really worth it. There's even a jade slip with a cultivation method on it, the mysterious soul technique, an incomplete piece sold for 20,000 points. It's too expensive. In this way, Zhang Han found that many of the treasures were suitable for himself, but as he only had 20,000 points, he had no way to buy a lot of them. He could only choose the most suitable one, the 5th stage Serene World Stone. However, he didn't want to let go of the Thunder Yang grass either. While Zhang Han was pondering over the matter, all of a sudden, a purple-robed person came from the side. His body was wrapped in a flowing glow, which blocked out Zhang Han's soul sense. Zhang Han studied his paces and abruptly remarked, You've mistaken me for someone else. The purple-robed man answered in a low voice. His voice was still rigid and emotionless. Zhang Han was silent for 2 seconds. Then, he shook his head and said, with your strength, there's no need to hide your identity. Huh? The purple-robed man suddenly laughed and waved his right hand. The purple robe on his body dissipated, and the man, as expected, was Ui. Zhang Han was not too surprised. On the contrary, Ui asked curiously, how did you notice that it's me? I'm sure that my method of hiding my aura can hardly be seen through by those in the heaven realm, let alone those in the divine realm. At this, Zhang Han smiled but said nothing. How could he say that he saw it through with his eyes? Since Zhang Han didn't answer, Ui stopped pursuing the subject. Instead, he focused on something else. Why haven't you broken through the innateness stage yet? I'm not in a rush. The world will appear in 2 days. You don't think you need to rush? Boy, the situation in your Heavenly Knights sect may not be optimistic, Ui said in a bewildered tone. Let's wait and see. Zhang Han smiled and said, if I want to break through, I can do it at any time. You have a good temperament. It's actually hopeful for you to reach the elixir stage in the future, Ui said, with the look of an elder praising a junior. That remark, yet, made Zhang Han raise his eyebrows. Judging from your tone, your cultivation may be at the early stage of the elixir, or the peak of the innateness stage. I guess there is an 80% chance that you are at the peak of the innateness stage. Ui was stunned. You seem to have thought light of me, haven't you? Think light of you? Zhang Han smiled but didn't say anything more. Interesting. Ui also smiled faintly. He was now quite a different man compared to the time when they met at the Qingfeng sect. At that time, he was a little stubborn, while now he had the demeanor of an accomplished master. In this world, or even in a worldlet, we're called martial artists. There are the divine realm, the earth realm, and the heaven realm, but the most orthodox names are chi refinement, foundation, innateness, elixir, and chi refining stage. It's all about chi. The foundation stage is a cumulative process. When I was in the sect and saw you strike, I peeped into your meridians. Although there was only half of it, I still found the difference between you and a pure martial artist. You are also a cultivator, am I right? Yes. Zhang Han nodded. He also felt that Ui was an orthodox cultivator with some strength. But he had never expected that what Ui got to say next would make him a little astounded. Since you know about cultivators, you must also know about the Kunlun immortal world, which is the place for cultivators to stay. It's superior to this world. The capable ones can destroy rivers and mountains with their own hands. In their eyes, the martial arts world is a very inferior product. Ui shook his head repeatedly, with emotions in his eyes. Kunlun immortal realm? Zhang Han's lips trembled slightly. I suppose it has no entrance or exit. so it must be difficult to go in and out of it. Oh, you also know this? Ui said in surprise. Yes, only at a certain time, there will be a mysterious force rippling in the depths of the Kunlun Mountains. It is the weakest time node of the world's enchantment. At that time, you can use magic arts to go in and out, but many people don't want to come, because people at my level will be suppressed by this world, and it is difficult to make progress in cultivation. So, when you reach the peak of the innateness stage, you will feel it and will try your best to go to the Kunlun Immortal World. Is the Kunlun Immortal World that you are talking about just a self-contained world? Zhang Han asked. Yes, the Kunlun Immortal World is very large. It houses loads of sects, plenty of cultivation resources, and rich spiritual chi. It is a treasured place for cultivation, not to mention those at the elixir stage. Even the old Yuan Yings live there. Ui seemed to be in a good mood, willing to chat with Zhang Han for a little while. However, after hearing these few pieces of news, Zhang Han made a very close guess about the situation, so he was not interested in it anymore. When he was free, he would of course go home to accompany his wife and daughter. Let's talk about exchanging for treasures. Zhang Han shook his head and said, "Oh, the points are marked here. How else do you want to exchange for them?" Ui asked with a smile, as if he had forgotten what Zhang Han had told him when he went upstairs. He was not in a hurry, he had time to kill. So he said unhurriedly, "Last time, it was your grandfather, Zhang Mu, who came in. He didn't have enough points, but he exchanged some other things for a treasure worth 40,000 points. As you can see, there are countless 5th stage spirit treasures here. Half of them were brought here by me from the Kunlun Immortal World, and the other half was what I looted from all kinds of ruins in the past century. I have to say that the relics of this world are really special. If the Kunlun Immortal World had opened frequently, the martial arts world wouldn't have got a share of these treasures at all." Zhang Han then spoke his mind. "I have more than 20,000 points, and I want to exchange for a 5th stage spirit treasure, the Serene World Stone. As for the thing I'm talking about, I'll exchange it for another 5th stage spirit treasure, the Thunder Yang Grass." "You want to trade for the Thunder Yang Grass? How ambitious." Ui's face suddenly paled a little. "If I'm not satisfied with what you offer, you may not be able to take away any of the spirit treasures, and you know too much. If you die here, don't blame me for not reminding you. It's not that I know too much, but that you don't know enough," Zhang Han replied flatly. "Really? Aren't you afraid of me? You are just at the foundation stage. You have no chance against me." Ui cracked a smile again, but what he was thinking was concealed. "Will you kill me?" The simple question made Ui speechless. After a good 10 seconds of silence, Ui shook his head with a smile. "Boy, you're interesting." He also knew that in the past 100 years, only the Heavenly Treasure School and the No Action Immortal were in the legend. For such a long time, he had only opened the Heavenly Treasure School once every few years. It could be seen that he was not a murderous, domineering, or unreasonable person. He was just a cultivator who liked to look for treasures and took world traveling as his hobby. Zhang Han had seen many people like him. Whether it's for the sake of that guy named Zhang Mu or your father, Zhang Wenyu, or for other issues, you are safe here. But if you're fooling around, I will deduct your points. As for the term you proposed, I accept it, as long as the result is satisfying. The Serene World Stone and Thunder Yang Grass are all yours. Anyway, how did you spot the flaws of my puppets that I haven't solved for decades? Ui voiced his doubts. You have white-robed, black-robed, azure-robed, and finally violet-robed puppets. Of these 4 types of puppets, the white-robed and azure-robed puppets were the first batch you refined, am I right? Hearing Zhang Han's words, Ui narrowed his eyes and nodded. Yes. The black-robed puppet is the second batch you refined. The purple-robed puppet is the third batch and also the most well-developed batch, right? Yes. The white-robed puppet is devised to be the main force in a battle, so its materials have been refined layer by layer and eventually formed into a solid body. It has the automatic recovery ability, but every activation requires you to spare some mind to control it, doesn't it? Yes. The material used to refine the green-robed puppet is close to the soul sense. It does not possess a very good fighting ability, yet it allows you to personally search for some high-grade spirit treasures. Before Zhang Han could ask, Ui quietly replied, yes. As to the black-robed puppet, it was developed after you discovered the method of refining puppets. It requires one's soul, hence, you fetched a yin soul to merge with the puppet. Eventually, you gained the ability to maintain the puppet's operations at the cost of crystal stones. You're right. The purple-robed puppet was made with a more precise method you later found. First, you refined the soul into an unconscious hazy shape. Then, you refined the puppet. At the third step, you merged the two and created a puppet with the ability to move by itself. That's right. After saying that, Ui wiped the sweat off from his forehead without realizing it. He was very uneasy because the secret processes of him making puppets had been recounted by another man. How did he know all this? Ui suddenly realized that Zhang Han was not as simple as he had thought. So, give me the Serene World Stone and Thunder Yang Grass first, Zhang Han said and reached out his right hand to Ui. He looked like he was asking for his debt. Oh, okay. Ui was a little dumbstruck after the talk and subconsciously took out the two kinds of treasures. Hold on. Just as Ui took the treasures out, he froze for a moment and looked at Zhang Han warily. Are you trying to play tricks? Why do you want the spirit treasures before you offer me the solution? I'm afraid that you're so cunning that you won't admit what you have promised. I can't do anything to you given your strong strength, so, hand me the treasures first. I'm right here. You can take the treasures back if my solution doesn't work, Zhang Han insisted without taking back his hand. At that remark, Ui looked Zhang Han up and down. Finally, he gave a snort and put the two spirit treasures in front of Zhang Han. Swoosh. After summoning them into the space ring, Zhang Han smiled and said, you're on the right track, but your method is wrong. It calls for some secret techniques to refine the soul into an unconscious hazy state. Most of these secret techniques are only known to the specialized cultivators. What level is your strength at? Tell me and I'll teach you the secret techniques at once. Upon hearing this remark, Ui was silent for 2 seconds, and then muttered, half a step away from the elixir stage. After saying that, he cast a solitary look at the side wall. On the wall displayed a ton of treasures, and there was a transcendent aura rising from him. In fact, he was also looking at Zhang Han out of the corner of his eye. He wanted to see his stunned expression. Or in the next second, he'll be full of respect and call me mighty senior, won't he? Just as the thought came to Ui's mind. Oh. A calm voice came out. There is a secret technique that you happen to be able to perform, though with efforts. This technique is a way to refine objects with the fire of the true spirit. The so-called fire of the true spirit is a secret technique that should be cast with 30% of spiritual force and 70% soul sense. In the refining process, there are 3 stages. I'll teach you this secret technique first. What the hell? Ui, am a cultivator half a step away from the elixir stage. What are you doing here? Don't you know how to respect your senior? Ui really wanted to scold Zhang Han for having no manners. However, when Zhang Han went straight to the secret method, it immediately intrigued Ui. He repelled other thoughts and listened carefully. While listening to Zhang Han's instructions, he began to perform the secret method. Wait. How should I cast the soul sense root? Why does the spiritual force have to pass one more meridian and form an array inside me? Slow down a bit, I didn't understand this tricky point. What's this? After a total of 1.5 hours lecture, Ui cast the secret method for the first time. The fire of the true spirit was earth yellow, and it burnt for 2 seconds before it was extinguished with a rustling sound. Then, he tried the second time, the third time, the fourth time. Every practice was coupled with many questions from Ui. But every time, Zhang Han also criticized him in a helpless tone. I've explained this issue twice. Why did you still not take heed of it? Every time you were about to finish, you relaxed your mind. Can't you stabilize your divine realm? You are half a step away from the elixir stage. But how could you make such a stupid mistake? As the lecture went on, Zhang Han started to feel as if he was passing the 9th stage tribulation. His tone was sometimes fierce and sometimes helpless. For once or twice, he even reprimanded his student. Ui had big drops of perspiration all over his forehead. It seemed that he had forgotten that he, a cultivator who was half a step away from the elixir stage, was dealing with a person who hadn't reached the innateness stage yet. Sorry, it's a bit difficult here, I have to familiarize myself with it. Oh, I forgot that problem we discussed just now. I feel a little awkward to use this secret method. I'll adjust my mentality. I know, this time, I'll pay attention to it and try my best to succeed. Finally, after another hour and a half, Ui successfully displayed the fire of true spirit, and that made him overjoyed. Ha ha ha, I made it, the fire of the true spirit. I can feel its aggressiveness. It turns out that I've got this point wrong before. While immersed in happiness, he suddenly thought of something. His face froze. Ahem, ahem. Ui coughed lightly, looking calm, and again put on airs as if he was a senior. Well, this secret method is very good. It's worth it. The Thunder Yang grass was worth more than 40,000 points, but Ui felt that it was a bargain. Although he felt very happy and reckoned that it was a very nice deal, his expression was very calm. Well, he was trying to put on a poker face, because he was afraid that Zhang Han would ask for more spirit treasures. At his words, Zhang Han nodded. If nothing else, I'll hit the road. He was always that efficient. With that, Zhang Han turned and made his way to the staircase, leaving Ui, whose corner of his mouth was twitching, behind. At the staircase, Zhang Han suddenly stopped, looked back, and said, by the way, Chief, I also know a method that may come in handy for you when you break through to the elixir stage. You can use it to refine higher-level puppets. This secret method is relatively high-end. Do you want to make a deal with me? Hiss. Ui's face hardened. After 2 seconds of silence, he asked, how much is it? 4 spirit treasures here. No, no. Ui shook his head repeatedly. I think the current secret method is good enough. No need. At his reaction, Zhang Han shook his head and smiled. Then he turned around and walked downstairs. Interesting. Ui gazed at the staircase and said emotionally, this boy is much more terrifying than Zhang Mu. He will definitely become somebody in the future. He even makes me start to doubt if he has been possessed by a certain old monster. Even if it's not that case, he must have also obtained a great opportunity. He's even grasped such a secret method. Scary. That's scary. Zhang Han went down the stairs. The 6th floor was already empty. The 5 men must have exchanged for treasures and left a long time ago. When he passed through the treasure area and arrived at the 5th floor, there weren't many people either. Only less than 10 people were still on this floor examining treasures. When they spotted Zhang Han, their expressions changed slightly. Seeing this, Zhang Han knew that they must have heard about the news of him going up to the 7th floor without racking his brains. Sure enough, when Zhang Han came to the 4th floor, there were already a lot of people there. As soon as he reached the bottom of the stairs, he heard a lot of murmurs. This is the 2nd time someone has gone up to the 7th floor of the Heavenly Treasure School. Merciless Zhang deserves his reputation. I just don't know what kind of treasure he will exchange for. It's the 7th floor of the Heavenly Treasure School. I'm wondering what's on that floor. While other people were talking about it, Danon and his men were also discussing it in a low voice. All of them were a little confused about this matter. Since they didn't have enough points to go up, they had been under the impression that Zhang Han was only on the 6th floor, but to their huge surprise, he turned out to have gone up to the 7th floor. Last time, it was Xuanhuan who broke the record. This time, it was Zhang Han. Had all the record-breaking events of the past century been reserved by the Heavenly Knight sect? Master Zhao Feng was the first one who saw Zhang Han. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Then, the others also noticed him, when they saw the man of the moment come down. The entire hall became so quiet that even the sound of a needle falling could be heard. Everyone was staring at Zhang Han. They would not be shocked by the divine objects someone else had traded for, but a man going up to the 7th floor could hold them in amazement for a long time. After all, it was something that even the heads of many large sects in the world hadn't accomplished yet. Chapter 709, Teaching at the Heavenly Talisman Sect. Brother Han. Shen Chenking greeted Zhang Han with a smile. His attitude made the others a little speechless. When has Emperor King ever put on such a bright smile and come out to greet others in person? Perhaps only Zhang Han Yang can make him do that. People on Mount New Moon were already used to it, but the others had not seen it before, as it was their first time. They were all sort of astonished. However, this was nothing compared to the fact that Zhang Han had visited the 7th floor. With the arrival of Zhang Han, the murmurs gradually quieted down. If Yilong Yuan, Mugs, and the others saw this, they would probably be very cross. Why is Zhang Han Yang the one who is in the limelight again? Han, you are amazing. Rong Jiaxin approached Zhang Han with a beam and gave Zhang Han a thumbs up. I'm also impressed. Gaik Kong repeatedly shook his head in defeat. He felt that he was no match for Zhang Han. The boy made his debut only a year ago, but he was already very capable. The world lit would soon appear. When Zhang Guangyu came out, he would surely be elated. Given his temper, well, in the past, he never showed his emotions on his face, but now, I'm afraid he would laugh continuously for several years this time. When he comes out, I will definitely drink with him for days. Gaik Kong digressed after making one remark. The others also gathered around Zhang Han and congratulated him, which made Zhang Han feel that he had done something really amazing. In fact, for these people, it was indeed a very amazing achievement. Do you still have points left? Zhang Han nodded to the crowd and asked. Before going upstairs, he had 20,573 points. Then, he bought the Serene World Stone, which cost him 20,500 points. There were still 73 points left. It might not seem to be a big fortune, but the cheapest holy object here was only sold for 450 points. Zhang Han had something else he wanted to exchange for since he still had a small number of points to spend. He just wanted to see if others had any points left, so they could put their points together and exchange for more treasures. I still have 58 points, but I don't know what to exchange for. Shen Chenking smiled and said, there are 170 points left in my grandfather's account. We just discussed it. Let's gather all the points and see if we can exchange for a better one. We have 480 points in total, and we want to exchange for a holy object and plant it in Brother Han's medicine farm on the mountain. Zhang Han looked into the eyes filled with sincerity of the people around him, such as Rong Jiaxin, Gaik Kong, Shen Chenking, Zhao Feng, and so on. It could be said that their sincerity came from their hearts, and the warmth and gratitude Zhang Han felt also came from his heart. Though there was a saying that the world is rich in varieties, this large group of people was very united. Zhang Han knew he was not a good person, but he also knew that he would be a real good man to these people in front of him. Brotherhood was fostered through company. These people had long been acknowledged by Zhang Han. Then I will not stand on ceremony. Please give me your points. Zhang Han beamed. Everyone transferred their points to Zhang Han. Then the points in Zhang Han's token reached 743. Brother Han, what do you want to exchange for? Shen Chenking asked curiously. Talismans. Zhang Han replied and then went straight to the side. There was a thick pile of talisman papers, which was a heaven-grade treasure. The talisman paper was a consumable made of a special material. When Zhang Han passed by before, he already saw the talisman paper there. The material was the shadow pine wood, which was quite good. He prepared to buy some of the talisman paper and then send some to the Heavenly Talisman sect. Last time, people in the Heavenly Talisman sect had come to help them at the risk of their lives. Zhang Han had borne their kindness in heart and promised to hew out a field for them on Mount New Moon. This was a generous offer, but the head of the Heavenly Talisman sect shook his head and politely declined it. He said that they were used to live in the sect. Zhang Han didn't insist, thinking that he would repay them if there was a chance. Certainly, now the opportunity had come. There was a display cabinet, more than half of which was occupied by talisman paper. The quantity was huge. A sheet of talisman paper was worth 5 points. Zhang Han directly spent all the 743 points. One thing buyer-friendly was that the last 3 points successfully bought a sheet of talisman paper. Even so, as long as there were treasures being traded for points, the Heavenly Treasure School would be able to make a profit. The points it assigned to the treasures were all deducted by 10% from the base of value as a commission. Everyone knew this. Still, they rushed to purchase the treasures. After all, the Heavenly Treasure School was the only one doing such business. He tucked the thick stack of talismans into his space ring. "Let's go," Zhang Han said. With no intention to look for other treasures, he led the others to the door. Wang Ming and the others had been accustomed to it. When Zhang Han got out of home, he never went on a leisure trip. Instead, he just went for business, and he would go home to babysit his child as soon as he finished his work. Company was the most long-lasting confession of love. As far as they knew, Zhang Han was doing a good job in it. "Master, are we paying a visit to the Heavenly Talisman sect?" After they got in the car, Zhao Feng posed the question as he started the car. "Well, let's go there tomorrow." Zhang Han nodded. "But the world will open at any time in the next 2 days." Jiang Yanlan, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, couldn't help reminding them, "You'd better be fully prepared. Once the gate of the worldlet is open, I'll go back to the Saint Serene world. If anything happens, I'll ask Captain Xuanhuan to inform you of it. Go back to make a breakthrough." Zhang Han glanced at her and said with a chuckle, "Be careful when you make a breakthrough. Don't recklessly expand the power of your bloodline when you make a breakthrough, or you will suffer from it. The little guy in your body is not really like what Chen Qing has been dealing with. You know it." Jiang Yanlan's eyes suddenly stiffened. "The bloodline forcing its way into your body that you felt when you launched attacks last time doesn't belong to you after all. It's a good thing that there is a seal. You can tell the elder members of your family not to rush. It's best to keep less than 50% of the seal activated while you slowly swallow and digest it," Zhang Han explained. Yet, he did not go into detail, for he didn't know about the bloodline in Jiang Yanlan's body. Nevertheless, he knew perfectly well about how Jiang Yanlan absorbed the spirit beast and integrated its bloodline into her body. So, he gave her some advice. "If one does you a small favor, you should pay back with a larger favor." Zhang Han had always been like this. What was more, there was something going on between Jiang Yanlan and Instructor Liu. Perhaps one day they would really hook up. So, Jiang Yanlan was basically half of his people. "All right, got it, thanks." Jiang Yanlan was still a little skeptical, but she thanked Zhang Han at once. Although she was a little absent-minded, she still attached great importance to Zhang Han's words. Because she knew that Zhang Han had once instructed Gai Xingkong, and since then on, Gai Xingkong's spear skills became fiercer and fiercer. Zhang Han had also persuaded Chen Qingqing to change his cultivation method and converted the security group from a group of ordinary people into a team of several grandmasters within a year. He was also on speaking terms with the warlord of Chan clan. Rumor had it that Zhang Han had been left in the worldlet and could return by opening the space door. There were too many records to evidence his magic working means. After figuring this out, Jiang Yanlan bore these words in mind, preparing to discuss the method with her father in detail. "Does the 7th floor contain treasures of higher grades?" All of a sudden, Chen Qingqing's question brought Jiang Yanlan out of her reverie. She turned her head to look at Zhang Han. "Just the same grade," Zhang Han replied nonchalantly. "Oh, There's nothing special about it then. Jiang Yanlan curled her lips. But the quality is much better, Zhang Han added dramatically. The other three people in the car were a little surprised. The quality is many times higher than that of common divine grade treasures, so it's the best kind? Shen Qingqing said, slightly raising his eyebrows. Yes, there are some real divine grade treasures worth 20,000 points or above each. Wow, are you saying that you only exchanged for 1? 2? 2? How come? I chatted with No Action Immortal for a while, maybe he was a little moved. Anyway, he gave me an extra. Shan Qingqing grinned and gave Zhang Han a strange look. He guessed that Brother Han must have purchased the other treasure with a certain powerful cultivation method or something like that. There's no such thing as a free lunch, one always has to pay the price for what he wants. How much is the extra treasure worth in points? Jiang Yanlan asked with curiosity. She also felt that she was on good terms with Zhang Han Yang and the others. If they were not close, they would not talk about points. Besides, they did not seem to mind chatting in her presence. 46,000 points. Puff. The group was a little shocked again. 46,000 points, boy. The lowest a divine object cost was about 5,000 points, but that price was 10 times more than that. How could there be such a big difference? Then, the group didn't pose more questions about the treasures but only talked about some other things, most of which were related to the worldlet. When Jiang Yanlan learned that No Action Immortal said the worldlet would open in 2 days, she chose to believe it. After all, No Action Immortal was stronger than those old monsters in the heaven realm. In this world, the origin of the heavenly treasure school and the strength of No Action Immortal were both mysteries. No one knew much about them, but since this moment on, Zhang Han had known them through and through. Half a step away from the elixir stage. It seemed a long way to go, but in fact, it's not far away. Zhang Han looked out of the window. They had arrived at the villa area as they chatted. The villa ahead was the one he lived in. He got off and opened the door of his house. Papa! A cry of surprise, accompanied by a scuttling little figure called Meng Meng, greeted him. This was his favorite voice, also his favorite scene. He opened his arms and let Meng Meng race into his embrace. At that moment, his heart was at peace. In the afternoon, the family of 3 hung out by themselves. Zhang Han drove his family to 2 nearby tourist attractions. The next morning, they took a flight heading for Haikou. When the plane landed, the head of the Heavenly Talisman sect and a large group of disciples were already waiting at the airport to pick them up. Mr. Zhang. They said hello to each other warmly. Welcome, welcome, the sect has prepared lunch, let's go over and talk while eating, the sect leader said with a smile. Thank you for your hospitality, Leader Qi. Zhang Han and his family got in one of the cars of the arranged motorcade. Although they were going to have lunch, the ride actually lasted for 2 hours. The cars traveled from the south airport to a mountain in the far north of the city and finally arrived at the Heavenly Talisman sect at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The architecture here was modern, almost the same as that on Mount New Moon. The motorcade progressed directly to the restaurant. For lunch, they had many wild animal dishes, as well as a lot of seafood and other local specialties. The dishes tasted good. Zhang Han put a lot of wild animal meat in Meng Meng's bowl. After all, they seldom had a chance to have such dishes. There were more than a dozen people at their table. Aside from Leader Qi, there were also eldest brother Mahdi, who had dreamed of becoming a hero, and junior brother Lu, who was quite talented. Junior brother Lu was not far away from becoming a grand master, and his progress was very fast. After the meal, Meng Meng, Xian, Zif, Wang Jiaxin, Zhang Li, Wang Ya, and the others went to the back mountain to enjoy the scenery, while Zhang Han and the others were welcomed into the lobby of the main residence. Drinking the best mojian tea prepared by Leader Qi, Zhang Han went straight to the business. With a wave of his right hand, a stack of talismans appeared out of thin air and floated to Leader Qi. Well, Leader Qi gazed at Zhang Han. These were treasures displayed in the heavenly treasure school. I reckon they are fine treasures, so I bought some, Zhang Han replied with a smile. Oh, thank you for your kindness, Mr. Zhang. Sect leader Qi did not stand on ceremony and accepted the talismans at once. This also made Mahdi, junior brother Lu, and a few other people laugh merrily. They were also proud of their good relationship with Zhang Han Yang. After all, there were still discussions about how difficult it was to get along with Zhang Han Yang in the martial arts world. I'm not here just to give these talismans to you, Zhang Han said abruptly. Then, Leader Qi was stunned and then said, is it about the opening of the world lit? No. Zhang Han shook his head slightly, as everyone gazed at him with interest. He slowly made a speech that made all their faces freeze. I'm here to teach. You're a sect studying talismans. I happen to know 3 kinds of talismans, one offensive, the other 2 defensive. The offensive talisman is controlled by 7 stars. After thorough research, hundreds of offensive talismans can be derived from it. The defensive ones are yin and yang holy talismans. The first one throws off forces, the second one fends off soul attacks. They are also major talismans. If you understand them thoroughly, you can develop more than 100 talismans from the 2. Hearing what he said, everyone, including Leader Qi, was sort of stupefied. What did he say? After studying a single talisman thoroughly, one can also master several hundred other talismans. Is that even possible? However, Zhang Han didn't give them much time to be immersed in shock. He then proposed, you find a suitable place, I'll show you. Ah, okay. Leader Qi stood up, feeling a little dizzy. Wait. When everyone got to their feet, they were suddenly all stunned. So was Chen Chengqing. They cast their eyes on Zhang Han at the same time, and their eyelids couldn't stop trembling. Heavens, he even has knowledge of talismans? Chapter 710, The Arrival. Since they had been in contact with Zhang Han, they had seen Zhang Han perform sorcery, demonstrate the cultivation method of all 8 drought demonic dragon, cast his excellent fighting skills, display his almost flawless alchemy without accidental explosions, set up mysterious arrays, and work his dreamy body movements. And now he even knew talismans? How could a person have such a broad knowledge, even if he obtained a heaven-defying martial arts heritage of predecessors? If he wanted to perform the skills with proficiency, he still needed a higher-level faculty of understanding. How could he have comprehended so much? Heading out with their numb brains, all the people present fixed their eyes unfalteringly on Zhang Han. They felt that even a talent was supposed to have an upper limit on his talents. Zhang Han was obviously no longer just a talent. As to the talents from small worlds or so, such as Shi Fenwu, his most impressive feature was his speed. Even Zhang Han admitted that his full speed might be faster than his current speed. Mugs, the female demon, also practiced all kinds of secret skills of the Luofu sword sect. She specialized in swordsmanship, while Yilong Yuan, the devil incarnate, could be said to be an expert of the soul. However, since he had not reached the divine realm yet, the power he could exert on the secret skills of the sect was limited. Emperor King's practice was centered on his king dragon blood, and Gaik Sinkong specialized in spear techniques. Most practitioners were focused on one kind of kung fu and gained a certain degree of mastery, which made them famous all over the world. But when it came to Zhang Han's case, his array skill was much more powerful than that of the mystical fog sect. The heavenly elixir sect had no way to catch up with him in terms of alchemy. His body movements and secret skills were all top-notch. It indeed made the others sort of speechless. They didn't know what to say to express their thoughts. Stupefied, they just followed the crowd to the big yard in front of the main residence. Zhang Han looked at a round flower bed with a radius of more than 30 meters. He approached it, waved his right hand, and many petals flew all over the sky before turning into powder. Then Zhang Han took out another blue-red stone, which was a heaven-grade treasure. He crushed it and flung the pieces forward. Clatter! The stone chips and the petal powder blended together, giving off a faint light. There are many kinds of ways to draw a 7-star controlling talisman, and I only know 3 of them. I'll leave them here for you to study. As for how much you can understand in the end, it depends on your comprehension. I'll assist you with the Azure Rainbow Stone, and the picture of the talismans can be preserved for a year. During the year, you should be able to learn these talismans by heart. Good, good, good. Leader Qi, who was standing next to Zhang Han, nodded repeatedly. The others didn't make any comments. They were rather quiet, for they didn't want to disturb Zhang Han. Swish. The petal powder and the Azure Rainbow Stone merged into a stream of light, slowly falling on the flower bed as if a silk thread was constantly rotating around it, gradually forming a very complicated mark. I forgot it. Leader Qi widened his eyes to watch the process. All of a sudden, he found that it was dazzling. Ouch! Even Mahdi, who was beside him, covered his eyes, tears brimming at the corners of his eyes. It was not that he was taking the crude excuse of what he saw was an eyesore, but that he had suffered suppression when using his mind and consciousness to observe it. Not everyone could come to study this talisman as long as they liked. Sect leader Qi, however, managed to keep watching the flow, but he could not memorize a thing. Don't rush. At this, Zhang Han smiled and said, you can see it later, when the talismans are done. All you need to do is to use 80% of the soul sense and 20% of the spiritual force and gather them to draw the talismans. While Zhang Han was speaking, his eyes suddenly lit up, and he pressed on Leader Qi's shoulder with his right fingers. He was passing on the secret techniques to him. Most of the talismans were made by integrating the soul sense with the talisman paper as if one were creating a world. The skill required sharp comprehension, yet, Zhang Han was aware that the talismans he taught them were not very high-end, so the steps of drawing them were much simpler. This is the first one, the second one, the third one. Zhang Han waved his fingers and drew 3 curves on the left side of the flower bed. He drew the curves so fast that the others all thought they could not grasp them, but then, when the talismans took shape, some spots of light glittered in the curves. Like a cultivation method running in meridians, the spots of light moved along the patterns, showing the others the complete route over and over again. Oh, that's good, that's good. Leader Qi let out a long breath of relief. He knew very well that he couldn't remember them even if he looked at them twice. He probably wouldn't be able to memorize the curves even if he observed them 8 or 10 times. The talismans are highly enigmatic. Soon, Sect leader Qi was absorbed by the patterns. The Yin and Yang Holy Talisman consists of the Sinister Yin Talisman and Profound Yang Talisman. Of the two, the Sinister Yin Talisman is used to defend against some soul attacks, while the Profound Yang Talisman is developed to fend off external forces. I don't know much about that, so I won't go further into it. You can comprehend it yourself, Zhang Han remarked. Then, he sent streams of light into the flower bed. Eventually, they converged into 2 very complicated talismans. Having watched the last part, Leader Qi also felt dizzy. He shook his head and said, I don't think one should stare at it for a long time, am I right? Zhang Han nodded and said, it's normal to feel a little uncomfortable, but it's good to carry on a bit, as long as you don't overexert yourself too much. Okay. Got it. Leader Qi made a hold fist salute to Zhang Han and said seriously, thank you for your instructions, Mr. Zhang. You're welcome, this is what you deserve. If I come across any treasures suitable for you in the future, I will be back. Zhang Han shook his head with a smile, looked at his watch, and added, it's getting late, we're going back to Hong Kong. You're leaving so soon, you should stay for a night and let me entertain you, said Sect leader Qi in a haste. Exactly, Senior Zhang, I've prepared a lot of wild animals for dinner. Mahdi urged him to stay sincerely. In fact, his way of addressing Zhang Han was a little funny. Nowadays, most of the outsiders called Zhang Han Mr. Zhang or Zhang Han Yang. Those who were familiar with him called him Zhang Han, Brother Han, or Boss. The elders just referred to him by Han. However, It seemed that this was the first time that he had heard someone call him senior. Thanks, but no need. Hearing the invitation, Zhang Han shook his head and said, maybe next time. Zhang Han's words moved many people, for it showed that the Heavenly Talisman sect would get some benefits from Zhang Han in the future. Of course, they were worthy of the reward. Those present had a clear understanding of the battle that took place a few days ago after all. Seeing Zhang Han's gesture of paying back the people he was in debt to, they also felt quite contented. Leader Qi still wanted to persuade Zhang Han to stay, as he not only hoped to invite him to dinner but also hoped to further consult him about talismans. When Chen Qingqing saw this, he explained, the gate of the worldlet may open tomorrow. We have to go back and make some preparations. I see. Leader Qi was taken aback for a moment. Then, he said, since the gate of the worldlet is about to open, you really need to prepare for it. In this case, Mr. Zhang, Emperor, King, and everyone else, I won't keep you here. If you need anything in the future, just let me know. Sometimes friendship was like this. At first, it started because of a favor or something else. And when they came into contact with each other and found that they shared the same values and dreams, they got closer to each other. So Zhang Han went to the back mountain and played with Meng Meng for several minutes. Then, they went down the mountain and got on the plane. Back in Hong Kong, Meng Meng was even happier. The little girl was holding 3 dolls. One was a cartoon gorilla, which was for Dai. One was a black cartoon dog, which was for Little Hai. The last was a penguin, which was for Tiny Tot. Big Hai Hai, Little Hai Hai, and Tiny Tot. I am back. Meng Meng called as soon as she ran to the Thunder Yang tree. Woof, woof, woof. Ooh ooh ooh. C-O-O, C-O-O. Little Hai was the first to hurry over to Meng Meng, who was followed by Dai and Tiny Tot, who shuffled over. Do you miss Meng Meng? Woof. Ooh ooh ooh. C-O-O, C-O-O. I missed you, too. I've brought each of you a gift. Look, this is for Big Hai Hai, this is for Little Hai Hai, and this is for Tiny Tot. Oh, Tiny Tot, why is there so much oil on you? When Meng Meng handed the gift to Tiny Tot, she found that the hair in front of it was covered with oil stains. Dai and Little Hai looked embarrassed. Well, it's my fault. Dai moved its lips. Recently, Tiny Tot's appetite for meat was too good. This time, it took it an afternoon to roast a Kobe beef. Yet, no sooner had the beef was cooked than Tiny Tot rushed over to have a bite. Given its small size, how could it not get itself covered with oil stains? You're dirty, so I won't hold you in my arms. Meng Meng pouted her cute mouth. C-O-O, C-O-O. Tiny Tot responded to Meng Meng with 2 barks, not understanding a word. Anyway, its 2 big brothers barked like that, so it just imitated them. Behind them, Zhang Han didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I'll just wipe it with a tissue. While speaking, Zhang Han took out a tissue and started to clean Tiny Tot's fur until it became oil-free again. Let me see it. The oil is gone. Papa is the best. Meng Meng giggled and patted Tiny Tot on the chest several times. Then, she looked up at Dai and yelled, throw me high. Soon the back mountain was once again filled with laughter. Zhang Han and Xian were watching from the side. Are you going out tomorrow? Xian inquired, leaning her head on Zhang Han's shoulder. I'll first wait for news. There will be energy waves coming out before the gate of the worldlet opens. When the waves appear, Captain Jiang will inform me of it. Then, I will go there by plane. This time. It won't take long to get in. I'm just going to pick up my parents at the Heavenly Knights sect. You don't have to worry about my safety. I can break through to the innateness stage at any time. As for the safety of you two, I will refine some treasures tonight. If danger emerges, I will quickly come to you by crossing the space gate just like what I did last time. Zhang Han told her everything on his mind. However, at his words, Xian pursed her sexy pink lips several times, her eyes filled with concern. After about 2 seconds, She whispered, "Honey, I'm scared. I'm already nervous now. What should I do when your parents come back? What if they don't like Meng Meng and me?" That made Zhang Han at a loss whether to cry or to laugh. He gently held Xian in his arms and said softly, "Don't worry, you can put your heart back to where it was. They will surely like you and Meng Meng very much. They will be very happy to see that I've found such an excellent wife. As to you, you just need to focus on how to encourage my parents to give you and Meng Meng precious gifts. After all, their son has made you his wife." With Zhang Han's words, Xian became much less uptight. They then talked about what Zhang Han's parents liked, and Zhang Han also gave her some advice. Meng Meng, on the other hand, was still an issue hard to handle. After several rounds of prolonged explanations at night, the little girl finally agreed on Papa's decision of not taking her and Mama with him to pick up her grandparents. Anyway, it was good that she had been persuaded. Zhang Han had thought that it would be very late the next day before some of the energy waves arrived. But to his surprise, when he just began to have breakfast with Meng Meng and Xian in the next morning, his phone rang. It was Jiang Yanlan. As he picked up the phone, he heard her speaking in a solemn tone. "The gate is opening.